Chapter 1742. If they chose, they could transform into a human form based on the sacred source body. Then the spirit transformation ruler would have to start all over again. However, when they reached the samsara ruler level again, there was a high chance that they would be able to take that step. This was also why the apostles and rulers in the dimensional world were so willing to establish their factions. Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms had all been exchanged with the rulers in the swamp world by the Freedom Federation. For example, when the Medusa bloodline reached a certain level, they could choose to fuse with the bloodline of another life form. They could choose to fuse with the bloodline of a living being, and after the fusion, they would obtain the abilities of that living being. They would become a new type of sacred source life form. This type of sacred source life form had the same name, Gorgon. The Freedom Federation's rulers had once proposed a plan. It was to exchange for more sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline from the rulers. In order to obtain the sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline, they did not hesitate to capture a large number of Medusa demons. They would be jointly nurtured by the Class 5 creation masters of the Freedom Federation. But in the end, the plan had failed. Otherwise, if they could obtain a few more sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline, they could join Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian's joint effort. It should be able to make the joint effort stronger and more complete. Yan Ling, who had summoned the sacred source life forms, said to Qian Yu and Luo, "Are you sure you don't want to shoot down those moths flying in the sky?" Luo asked as he walked forward. "You don't have to worry about such things. It's useless to think about keeping a trump card for this battle. The abilities of your sacred source life forms are a secret to us. The other party cannot possibly know. If we shoot down these scouting phase, the other party will definitely send more. According to the information we have, Night Leaning Moon's disciple, Lu Jia, has a source-type life form that can produce many types of insects. Even if I use race judgment, that source-type life form's genes are different from these white moths, so it won't have any effect. Also, I can't use my Great Devil ability as I please." Luo had casually used race judgment before. This was because the ability could not be accumulated. If it could not be used 3 times a year, it would be wasted. It would be refreshed the next year. Thus, Luo had recklessly used it on other creatures in order to experiment with the racial judgment ability even though he knew that he couldn't use it all up. In the end, Luo discovered that the race judgment ability targeted the soul of the living being of the race. If it was used on a large race, the negative effects of racial judgment would cause Luo to suffer. Luo's soul was damaged. When facing an insect-type carcinoma Fey, Luo would only choose to use it when he knew that it was rare. Luo, Qian Yu, and the other 4 continued forward. He discovered that the originally intact terrain of the examination grounds had been destroyed. Apart from the tree trunk where the rot-flying locusts had been, even the large rocks had been gnawed into pieces by the rot-flying locusts. Not long after, the ground beneath their feet began to echo as they stepped on it. Luo immediately turned around and jumped back. The ground under his feet felt exceptionally solid. Luo said directly to Qian Yu, "It seems that Black's sand-type source-type life form has already spread here." As soon as Luo's voice fell, a quicksand vortex appeared on the land that Luo had just left. At that moment, numerous thin vines grew out of the sea of sand. After these vines grew out, they instantly wrapped around the 5 of them. However, Luo did not dodge the vines. This was because Yan Ling had already used her sacred source life form and was waving the huge folding fan in her hand that was covered in dark blue seaweed. As she waved the folding fan, the seaweed in her hand rapidly grew. Kai Hua, Yan Ling, Yu Changjian, Qian Yu, Luo, the Faceless Beast, and the 3 sacred source life forms were all fused together. The Cambrian petrified fish that Qian Yu had summoned were all fused together. Next, Yu Changjian's pig-bodied sacred source life form. The glove totem on his left hand that was wrapped in steel emitted a mournful sound. Kai Hua's human-faced, arachnid sacred source life form also had a layer of purplish-red evil light appear on the spider web between its hands. The gluttonous vine's ferocious attacks had clearly landed on each of them. However, The damage seemed to have been completely absorbed by the pig-bodied sacred source lifeform. The totem on the steel glove on his left hand materialized. In the end, the Borbor human monster seemed to have reached its limit and exploded into a puddle of blood. At that moment, the sacred source lifeform with a pig's body and a human's body appeared once again. He also provided a massive amount of life energy to everyone he linked with. The life energy was basically equivalent to the damage suffered by the pig-bodied sacred source lifeform. Then, Kaihua's human-faced arachnid sacred source lifeform trembled. The black and red spider silhouettes on his hands quickly crawled towards the gluttonous vine. These spider shadows were aimed at the gluttonous vines that had just attacked them. When the spider shadow landed on these carnivorous vines, a black and red spider mark immediately appeared on the vines. Every time the gluttonous vine struck, a new black and red spider shadow would appear, leaving behind a new mark. When the mark reached the third layer, the inside of the gluttonous vine, it would explode into a cloud of purplish-black poisonous smoke and then quickly wither. After a while, Luo, Xianyu, Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian, under the coordination of the three sacred source lifeforms, they only needed to move forward at a moderate pace. Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers and the Source Sand's attack. They would be easily neutralized. As long as Red Thorn used the gluttonous vine to attack, the Sea of Flowers would be completely wiped out by the explosion caused by the black and red spider mark. The Sea of Flowers that Lin Yuan had Red Thorn create was different from the Insect Queen's control of the rotting flying locusts. Lu Jie could not observe the insect swarm through the rotting flying locusts. However, Lin Yuan could understand the situation in the Sea of Flowers through Red Thorn. Lin Yuan's brows furrowed as he sensed everything in the Sea of Flowers. This was because he could not determine what the three sacred source lifeforms' abilities represented just based on his senses. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan could only wait for the 5 of them to arrive. He used Morbius True Data to examine the abilities of the 3 sacred source lifeforms. However, Morbius had told Lin Yuan before. When Morbius was awake, it could use a large amount of spiritual power. Morbius could use True Data on its own. It could be used on one's own phase to investigate from the perspective of one's own fey. Chapter 1743. Thus, Lin Yuan quickly communicated with Morbius. Partner, if you use Red Thorn's vision to examine the sacred source lifeforms in the Sea of Flowers, how much spiritual power do I need to use? Morbius pondered for a moment before replying, Partner, you might not need to use much spiritual power to examine the sacred source lifeforms. Partner, don't be fooled by the fact that you don't need to expend a lot of spirit power to examine phase and sacred source lifeforms. But if you use your contracted phase vision to examine across such a long distance, it will consume a lot of spiritual power. The amount of spiritual power in your body right now is definitely not enough. Perhaps if I use Red Thorn's vision to examine too, your spiritual power will be depleted. If you insist on examining, I suggest you remove the spiritual force imprint. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded. The spiritual force imprint had always been one of Lin Yuan's trump cards. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan would not easily use it. It could be said that this trump card had saved Lin Yuan's life countless times. Just as Lin Yuan decided to remove the spiritual force imprint and let Morbius use True Data to examine the 3 sacred source lifeforms, the Star Web audience's hearts were in their throats. It could be said that the majority of the Star Web audience had never heard of sacred source lifeforms before. However, on the general execution stage, in the duel between Han Chi and Black, for the first time, the Star Web audience knew that sacred source lifeforms were actually so powerful. At the start, Lu Jie and Lin Yuan had set up the array and transformed the entire hill into a sea of sand. Lu Jie had produced tens of thousands of insect swarms. He summoned a few more infamous insect-type carcinoma phase. The Sea of Flowers had also bloomed on the Sea of Sand. Gao Feng, who could support a 1,000-man team, also used his 3 phase. 1 breeze hibiscus and 2 spirit spring lilies helped Lu Jie recover his spiritual power. This allowed Lu Jie to rely on the insect queen to produce even more alien insects. With such skills and the situation, No matter how the Star Web audience looked at it, there was no possibility of losing. Lu Shuang, who had always been rather confident in her strength, looked at Black and Lu Jiezere and gulped. She did not know how to explain it. This was because the setup of this trap was simply too strong. It could definitely be called a textbook for positional warfare. If Lu Shuang brought the exquisite rhinoceros deer and the two walking shaman snakes to fight in such a formation, in less than 3 minutes, the sea of sand, the sea of flowers, and the sea of insects, it would swallow its own spiritual item until not even bits and dregs were left. While the 5 people on his side were actively making arrangements, the 5 people on the Freedom Federation's side were having an internal conflict. Lu Shuang thought she was going to win. There were also many celebratory voices on the Star Web. Is Lil Song finished today? What's there to fight in this battle? Let's celebrate Lord Lu Yifun's victory in advance. Don, what is the quality of the 5 people dispatched by the Freedom Federation diplomatic mission? To be able to have internal strife under such circumstances, it was simply amazing. Don't you know that we're going to fight together later? Dreaming of you, my legs are numb. There's a sea of flowers in the sea of sand, and a sea of insects in the sea of flowers. I can't think of any reason to lose this battle. Did you guys notice that the Freedom Envoy called Qian Yu was so afraid of the black-haired youth beside him? What was going on? As the Freedom Envoy, shouldn't Qian Yu be the leader of the team? After looking at the comments in her live-streaming room, Lu Shuang felt that things were not so simple. After all, this duel was proposed by the Freedom Federation. The people of the Freedom Federation wouldn't just let the younger generation die for no reason, right? There was no point in doing so. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation still had a bet at the Myriad Nations Conference in 2 years. When she thought about the bet, Lu Shuang felt that no federation could afford to lose. As expected, things were just as Lu Shuang thought. Facing the swarm of locusts, the 5 members of the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission responded. From the start, they used an incomprehensible power to get rid of an insect-type carcinoma Fey. Then, they faced the attack of the Sea of Flowers and summoned 3 sacred source lifeforms. It was unknown what kind of ability the 3 sacred source lifeforms had used to destroy the Sea of Flowers in an instant. What was the symbol of Black, the rising genius of the Radiance Federation within a year? It was definitely the endless Sea of Flowers. When Black had just become famous, he had saved Millstone Town. The Sea of Flowers was the main character. It could be said that the Sea of Flowers had become Black's undefeatable symbol. And now, Black's undefeatable symbol had been destroyed. The originally relaxed mood of the Star Web viewers immediately sank. Flowing breeze. What's going on? Why is Black's Sea of Flowers destroyed? Who can tell me what's going on? Clear. Is this the power that a young spirit chi professional can possess? Even a veteran powerhouse might not be this strong. Gu Qingshan. The opponent is so powerful. Can Lord Lu Yifun, Black, and the others resist? At this moment, Lu Shuang could not even utter a word. Lu Shuang had forgotten that she was a Star Web streamer. Lu Shuang only knew to stare at the live stream and pray that her side could win. Everyone knew the consequences of failure, but no one was willing to say it out loud. At that moment, Lu Shuang suddenly realized something. Black, who was wearing a silver mask, suddenly burst out with a massive amount of spirit chi. This spirit chi was so massive that Black's body could not contain it. As an A-rank spirit chi professional, Lu Shuang used her own spiritual power to compare with Black's spiritual power. Lu Shuang felt that her spirit chi was like a ladle of water beside a lake. This spirit chi surprised not only Lu Shuang but also the ordinary viewers in the livestream room. Hui Yao's 13 eminences, Li Su, and the Mercy God looked at Lin Yuan in shock. The spirit chi in Lin Yuan's body was already comparable to an S+ rank spirit chi professional. However, when a spirit chi professional reached S rank, the form of their spirit chi would change. R-rank spirit chi professionals could condense their spirit chi into a cyclone, and the ability to do so was considered an ordinary way of using spirit chi. However, when an S-rank spirit chi professional became an S-rank spirit chi professional, their spirit chi would turn into a mercury form. This condensed spirit qi would form a barrier on the surface of the spirit qi professional's body, which could withstand extremely powerful attacks. However, Lin Yuan's body did not have these spirit qi changes. Although the amount of spirit qi was astonishing, the use of spirit qi was only at the level of a B-rank spirit qi professional. But even so, just based on the amount of spiritual energy, it was too shocking. Lin Yuan did not think that after he unlocked the spirit qi imprint that he had not unlocked for a long time, there would be such a huge commotion. Indeed, Lin Yuan had stored the spirit qi imprint for a long time. 7017K. Chapter 1744. Blackie, on the other hand, had been upgraded to Diamond X/Fantasy V. The amount of spiritual power stored in the mark every day was astonishing. It was something that Gold Blackie could not compare to in a month. Lu Yifan, Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, and Gao Feng looked at Lin Yuan in shock. However, Lin Yuan could no longer care so much at that moment. Before the 5 Freedom Federation ambassadors got close, Lin Yuan needed to know the abilities of the 3 sacred source lifeforms. Only then could he give Gao Feng instructions. He wanted Gao Feng's sacred source lifeform, the memory-eating music box, to selectively target the sacred source lifeforms. From there, he could try to break the link between the 3 sacred source lifeforms. Lin Yuan channeled spiritual power into Morbius, which he wore on his wrist. No one noticed that Morbius glowed with a faint copper light under Lin Yuan's sleeve. Immediately after, Lin Yuan received Morbius's feedback. The images and data of the 3 sacred source lifeforms appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan was shocked when he saw the data of the 3 sacred source lifeforms. He immediately understood how the trio's sacred source lifeforms had caused such damage to Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers. Lin had mentioned this in the information she had given him. The 3 linked sacred source lifeforms of the Freedom Federation came from Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian. Before the team battle, Lin Yuan already knew the names of the 5 Freedom Federation ambassadors. The sacred source life form beside Yanling, which was hidden in a clamshell, was called Gorgon's Clam. Sacred source name, Gorgon's Clam, sacred source species. Source family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 4 stars, sacred source type. Water function frowny face seaweed chain flow. Release seaweed to form a chain around a selected target. The target connected to the seaweed can take damage together, and after taking damage, it will recover a certain amount of life force for the unit that has been injured. When using up spirit qi, the recovered life force can be allocated to a specific target. Spirit boil paralysis. Choose an area and paralyze the target with the highest amount of spirit qi. After paralyzing the target will not be able to move. After the target's spirit qi drops, it will choose another target with the highest amount of spirit qi. The one beside Yu Changjian was a sacred source life form with the body of a pig and the body of a human. It had 2 fangs and was called Gorgon's Tooth. Sacred source name, Gorgon's Tooth, sacred source species. Origin family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 4 stars, sacred source element. Metal function frowny face body splitting forging. When attacked, the user can absorb the damage from the target that they are connected to and bear all of the damage. When the damage is taken to the limit, the user can shatter their body to block the damage and convert the damage into life force, which is distributed to the target that they are connected to. With the healing from the life force, the shattered body can be restored. Gift of Teeth dedicates 1 source of power to a target, allowing the target to obtain an ability in a short period of time. The creature next to Kaihua had hands full of spider silk. It was the sacred source life form that had destroyed the Sea of Flowers. It was called Gorgon's Silk. Sacred source name, Gorgon's Silk, sacred source species. Origin family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 3 stars, sacred source type. Poison function frowny face corrosive goo heart explosion. Every time the user is attacked, a corrosive goo mark will be placed on the target. When the target has 3 layers of corrosive goo marks, the 3 corrosive goo marks will form a corrosive goo mark. The corrosive goo mark will detonate and destroy the target's energy core. Through the names of the 3 sacred source life forms, Lin Yuan could roughly guess why these three Fays could wield their swords in tandem with each other. Although Lin Yuan had also developed in the swamp world, he had never heard of the legend of Gorgon. Li Su had steadily built his base camp in the swamp world. He had yet to explore the swamp world in depth. Firstly, Lin Yuan wanted to develop his own faction in the swamp world. Secondly, Lin Yuan did not have that much time to explore the swamp world. This was because Lin Yuan's focus had always been on the development of the Divine Wood Federation. At that moment, he heard Morbius speak. "Partner, these three sacred source life forms should be newly formed after the same dimensional life forms transformed into source-type life forms. According to my investigation, the aura of these three sacred source life forms should be related to the Medusa demon in the swamp world. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with their bodies. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with the bodies of the three source-type life forms. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with their bodies." When Lin Yuan heard Morbius' words, he could not help but smile bitterly. According to his observations, Yanling's sacred source life form was the main one among the three sacred source life forms. As for the sacred source life form, the Gorgon muscle's second ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis. It was just right for him, who had removed the Spirit Chi imprint. Once he entered the range of the Gorgon muscle's influence. When the Gorgon muscle used its Spirit Boil Paralysis ability, he would instantly be unable to move. Of course, this was also a solution. If he did not remove the Spirit Chi imprint, it was impossible for him to find out the true data of these three sacred source life forms. The stars of Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian's sacred source life forms were not very high. This was normal. Before the Great Night Assembly, Zhongzai's sacred source life form had only been star 3. He had only broken through to star 4 during the Great Night Assembly. Zhongzai was 22 years old this year. Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian were obviously around 20 years old. It was obvious that they had spent a lot of effort to raise their sacred source life forms to such a level at such a young age. Gao Feng's sacred source life form could reach star 6. This was because His Majesty Cicada Cry had fed his sacred source life form, the intent-dispelling wind, to Gao Feng's Eating Memory 8 music box. For a very long time. His Majesty Cicada Cry's intent-dispelling wind could not break through. Take Lin Yuan as an example. His sacred source life form's star had only just broken through to star 4. However, Yanling and Yuchangjian were at the same level. In order to raise Princess's star level, Lin Yuan had spent a lot of effort. According to the sacred source life form's star level, Gao Feng's sacred source life form, the Eating Memory 8 music box. When it used the memory magic scissors and banishing melody, it could control Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian's sacred source life forms at will. Before knowing the sacred source life form's abilities, this seemed like an unfathomable ability. However, after understanding the sacred source life form's abilities, Lin Yuan immediately found the key to their sacred source life form's abilities. Lin Yuan immediately found the key to linking the sacred source life forms to each other. 7017K. Chapter 1745. Therefore, the combination of the three sacred source life forms. It was all because of Yanling's Gorgon muscle's ability, Algae Chain Flow. Yanling's Gorgon muscle's sacred source life form, Algae Chain Flow. The Gorgon muscle's tooth and Gorgon silk were linked together using algae. The Gorgon muscle's tooth and Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart could only be used in this way. If it could not be linked to multiple targets. Whether it was the Gorgon muscle's tooth's bone-eroding heart or Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart, none of them could have such a powerful effect. According to true data, the three sacred source life forms' abilities were introduced. The Gorgon muscle's tooth's bone-eroding heart ability mainly absorbed damage to itself and targets related to itself. It would bear all of the damage. It was a powerful defensive ability. When one's body was damaged to the limit, one's body would shatter. When the body shattered, all of the damage would be converted into life force. It would be distributed to other targets related to itself. This was the function of the Gorgon muscle, algae chain flow. When the linked target was injured, when the linked target was damaged, it could restore the life force of the target. It would also restore the life force of the target by consuming spirit energy. It could be assigned to a specific target. This allowed the life force released when the Gorgon muscle's tooth's body shattered to be transferred to the Gorgon muscle. It allowed the Gorgon muscle's tooth to recover, creating a seemingly invincible effect. The Gorgon silk was a poison-type sacred source life form. Its bone-eroding heart ability was an extremely powerful counterattack ability. Every time it was attacked, it would counterattack the target. It would apply a bone-eroding mark on the target. If the target was attacked 3 times, the Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart ability could apply 3 layers of bone-eroding marks on the same target. The bone-eroding mark would automatically form a black-red spider-shaped goo worm. The goo worm would automatically find the target's energy core. It would then detonate at the target's energy core. Without the Gorgon muscle's algae chain flow ability, this ability could be easily avoided, as long as it did not attack the Gorgon silk. However, it was precisely because of this link that it could attack any target in the team. It would cause the Gorgon's tooth to place a bone erosion mark on the target. The energy core of Red Thorn's child ramets was located inside the gluttonous vine, inside a small digestive cavity that could store digestive fluids. After the source sand turned into grains of sand, the entire sea of sand became the source sand's body. The source sand did not have an energy core. Therefore, although he was also marked with the eroding bone mark, he was still able to see through it. However, the sea of flowers created by Red Thorn was heavily damaged, while the source sand was not affected at all. Lin Yuan turned to look at Gao Feng and was about to tell him about the information he had obtained. However, when he thought about the Freedom Federation, there would be 2 majesties watching this battle. He did not want to expose his heaven-defying detection ability. Therefore, Lin Yuan used Genius' exclusive skill, Interconnected Tail. The white cat tail that all the Star Web viewers were looking forward to appeared again. It was just that when the cat's tail appeared this time, it did not launch an attack like when it confronted Han Chi in the previous match. At this time, 4 cat tails sprang out from behind Black. The cat's tails were like long ribbons, glowing like colored glass. They were exceptionally beautiful. The 4 cattails shot toward Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, Lu Yifan, and Gao Feng respectively. They linked the 4 of them together. On the Freedom Federation's side, a sacred source life form initiated a link with the team. It was the same for the Radiance Federation's side. However, from the appearance of this link, there was nothing special about it. To put it bluntly, it was just a link, but it was like there was no link at all. There were already high-class creation masters hidden among the Star Web viewers, and they were all guessing the abilities of the 4 cattails. Black had only used its cat's tail 3 times in total. Every time, it was displayed in an astonishing manner under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of people. But in the end, Black did not summon the fae that possessed the cattails. It was full of mystery. However, no matter what guesses were made, the 4 cattails were simply too calm. But soon, everyone knew from Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, and Gao Feng's expressions that the cattails were definitely not simple. Lu Jie had already been executed by Genius's interconnected tail. Therefore, Lu Jie was not unfamiliar with the feeling of being connected to Lin Yuan through the cattails. It was as though as long as he had any thoughts, Lin Yuan would be able to instantly receive them. There was no need to speak, and it was the most efficient communication. Zhong Zhe and Gao Feng had never participated in team battles before. They knew that Lin Yuan's ability was very powerful and would be of great help in this battle. However, Lu Yifan, who had been participating in team battles for the past few years, knew how precious Black's ability was. However, he knew how precious this ability of Black's was. It had reached the standard of a strategic level. In Lu Yifan's opinion, with this ability, as long as Black's combat strength was not too inferior to the top young generation, then he would be qualified to be a member of the Radiance Knights. This was because such an ability was simply too important to a team. Even teammates who had been working together for a long time would often make mistakes in coordination when they were unable to effectively communicate with each other during an emergency. The ability that Black displayed completely eliminated the possibility of mistakes. As the Radiance 100 sequence, Black was this batch's strongest dark horse. The battle with the Freedom Federation's Han Chi allowed Black to stand at the peak of the young generation's combat strength. Lu Yifan sighed softly. If there were no accidents, Black would definitely have a place in the next Radiance Envoy. Before Lu Yifan could sigh, he heard Lin Yuan explain the abilities of the 3 sacred source lifeforms through his thoughts. This caused Lu Yifan, who had seen much of the world, to suddenly open his eyes wide. Black had built a seamless communication bridge for the team through the cat-tailed light belt. Now, Black had displayed an unimaginable probing ability. Lu Yifan could not even see Black's shadow from such a distance. However, Black had used some unknown method to even detect the sacred source lifeform's abilities. In that case, didn't it mean that Black was an extremely powerful creation master? Lu Yifan listened to Black's every word very seriously. He carefully remembered the abilities of the 3 sacred source lifeforms. The more he listened, the more Lu Yifan was shocked. When the 3 sacred source lifeforms' abilities were linked together, there was no way to deal with them. Under such a perfect closure of functions, it was very difficult for ordinary methods to achieve anything. 7017K. Chapter 1746. In Lu Yifan's opinion, the easiest way to break it was to continuously counterattack with powerful attacks. Yanling wanted the sacred source life form, the Gorgon clam, to use its algae chain flow ability to restore the Gorgon tooth's vitality. Yanling herself needed to consume spiritual power. With a burst of powerful attacks, Yanling's spiritual power would be instantly depleted. It would allow the subsequent recovery of spiritual power to prevent Yanling from using the sacred source life form. If it were the other 4 Radiance envoys, they would probably be able to do it. However, Lu Yifan was a defense-type spirit chi professional. Among the defense-type spirit chi professionals, he was more inclined to support. He would not be able to produce powerful attacks. Previously, in the team, every Radiance envoy had their own specialties. Lu Yifan had never felt that a weak attack would be his shortcoming. However, Lu Yifan now realized this point. But by the time he realized this, it was already too late. He could not possibly replace himself and let any other Radiance envoy take the field, right? In the process of thinking, Lu Yifan did think of Zhong Zhe, Lu Jie, and Black, who were the main attackers in the team, to launch a series of attacks like that. However, no matter how strong Zhong Zhe, Lu Jie, and Black were, they were still B-rank spirit chi professionals. The limit of a phase strength was at most Diamond X/Fantasy V. Even if everyone had the ability to fight beyond their ranks. The battle between Black and Han Chi just now also proved this point. It was possible to deal damage beyond their ranks once. However, it was too difficult to deal dozens of damage beyond their ranks. According to the normal situation, this was the case. A spirit chi professional would need to use the sacred source lifeform's ability once, which would require about 5% to 8% of the spiritual power in the body. Even if it was 8%, the Gorgon clam's algae chain flow ability could be used 12 times in an instant. Furthermore, the Freedom Federation's other members would definitely not sit idly by while attacking Yanling. They could not just watch as the 3 sacred source lifeforms' linkage was broken. Just when Lu Yifan couldn't think of any good ideas at the moment, Black, who had just explained the 3 sacred source lifeforms' functions, spoke again. Gao Feng, your sacred source lifeform can effectively destroy the other party's 3 sacred source lifeforms. Don't bother about Kai Hua's Gorgon's silk and Yu Changjian's Gorgon's tooth. Let's target Yanling's sacred source lifeform, the clam's first ability, algae chain flow. Given your sacred source lifeform rank, you can easily seal the Gorge Gong clam's first ability through the memory magic scissors. Sensing Lin Yuan's intent, Gao Feng replied with his intent. No problem. But Black, the spiritual power in your body is the highest here. Gorgon muscle, use its second ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis, and it will immediately immobilize you. Should I use the memory-eating music box's memory magic scissors to seal off spirit boil paralysis as well? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment before shaking his head at Gao Feng. You are a sacred source life form, the memory eater music box. You are currently in the growth period and have yet to reach the 7-star adult stage. I can only use the memory magic scissors to make the sacred source life form forget its two functions. Freedom Envoy Qin Yu goes without saying. I feel that there's something fishy about that white-haired youth. Every time the memory magic scissors changes targets, it takes about half a minute. It's very difficult to change targets during a battle. Why don't we leave one of the memory magic scissors spots for Qin Yu and that white-haired youth? Then Lin Yuan looked at Zhong Zhe. He spoke with his intent. Big brother Zhong, the best way to break out of this situation is to kill Yan Ling. If we kill Yan Ling, the linkage will not be able to continue. Actually, there's another way, which is to kill Yu Changjian. Without the Gorgon Tooth, the Gorgon Silk can still cooperate with the Gorge Gong Clam. However, this kind of pure counterattack will not pose much of a threat to us. But according to our side's request, before the others are defeated, we cannot attack Yu Changjian. Therefore, we can only target Yan Ling. When everyone was communicating with their thoughts, the 5 of them were connected to each other. Zhong Zhe was not a fool. As a top genius of the Radiant Sect's younger generation, his combat IQ was extremely high. He immediately understood the meaning of Lin Yuan's words. Zhong Zhe took a deep breath and replied. Yan Ling is the core of the 3 of them. She will definitely be heavily protected. Zhong Zhe paused for a moment before continuing. Leave Yan Ling to me. As long as you can help me restrain the 2 of them, I will try to kill Yan Ling while the 2 of them are protecting her. When Zhong Zhe said this, he looked relaxed. But in reality, Zhong Zhe had already made up his mind to cut off all means of retreat. The words that Zhong Zhe said to Lin Yuan were also meant for the other 3 teammates. To say such a thing at such a time. Zhong Zhe was not the only one who wanted to try. Instead, Zhong Zhe was using his own life to establish a military order that must be completed. Lin Yuan could hear the determination in Zhong Zhe's words. The Gorgon muscle's spirit boil paralysis ability only immobilized his physical body. It did not affect Lin Yuan's ability to summon phase and execute some abilities that did not require him to move. Therefore, even if he was affected by the spirit boil paralysis, it was not completely useless. At that thought, Lin Yuan released Chime. Chime was a sound type and light type Fei in the Si Huang's new sun form. However, after transforming into the Brahma bird form, Chime would turn into a fire type dual type Fei. Chime's Brahma bird form was very compatible with Zhong Zhe's ability. Furthermore, the sun in Chime's body had a strong enhancement ability for fire type Feis. Chime could use its exclusive skill, Twin Sun Fetters, to sing to the sun. It could borrow energy from the sun to replenish its body's consumption. This way, Chime could continuously enhance Zhong Zhe's heaven-burning Ho's desolate bloodline Fei. Zhong Zhe, Gao Feng, Lu Jie, and Lu Yifan saw an indescribable sparrow appear in front of them. It was a wide tail feather covered with suns, like a cattail leaf fan. On the golden tail feather, there were layers of suns, a total of 99. 2 blue tail feathers, which were much longer than the golden tail feathers, were like 2 zither with golden clouds as the strings. The entire bird was golden blue, and the 2 colors perfectly fused together. As the bird flapped its wings and flew, the golden bird circled around the blue-gold bird. Among these birds, there were also several phoenixes. It produced a kind of phenomenon of phoenixes looking at sparrows. 7017K. Chapter 1747. Such a phenomenon was too unusual for a phase evolution. It had even subverted most of the spirit chi professionals' understanding. The sparrow phase bloodline belonged to a low-end avian fae. But how did the relatively low-end bloodline evolve to the point where it could suppress the might of the phoenix bloodline? Even the spectators on Star Web were holding their breaths as they paid attention to the match. He was praying for the Radiance Federation's 5 people with solemn expressions. At that moment, he couldn't help but be stunned by this bird Fei. Mr. Qian, fuck. I finally knew the true identity of the woman who controlled the golden birds that filled the sky during Black's duel. It's a bird. Wind blows. This sparrow phase appearance is too shocking. Was the purple butterfly summoned by Black the legendary blue flash purple butterfly? The blue flash purple butterfly and this bird were on the same level. If you really want to choose, Black's bird fae should be enough to be named the most beautiful bird fae. Muzi loves fish. Ridiculous. It was fine if Black's fae was powerful. And she's so beautiful. Black pill. This blue gold bird should be the evolved form of the blue bird from Black's previous life, right? Did I see the sparrow voice lowly goddess's true form? Upon seeing Chimey summoned by Black, Baihao's heart tightened. He knew that Chimey was going to fight again in this duel. At first, when Baihao found out that the sparrow voice lowly goddess was an avian fae, he could not accept it. But now Baihao had accepted reality. She treated the sparrow voice lowly goddess, a bird species fae, as the love of her life. After summoning Chimey, he immediately let it transform into the Sanskrit sparrow state. Chimey, which had just entered its body, seemed to be draped with a layer of red cape. At Lin Yuan's command, it landed on Zhong Zhe's shoulder. Lin Yuan said to Zhong Zhe, "Big brother Zhong, Yinin will cooperate with you." After saying that, Lin Yuan turned to look at Lu Yifan and said, "Big brother Lu Yifan, in a while, use your desolate bloodline fae, Sky Peach Azure Bird, and use Elite Guard Return. Let the Jing Wei spirit release the skill Emperor Yan's will to amplify Zhong Zhe. Help Zhong Zhe strike that blow." Due to the urgency of the situation, Lu Yifan had only introduced his Desolation Bloodline phase exclusive skill to everyone, and the abilities of Sacred Source Lifeforms. After the introductions, the duel began. Lu Yifan had a certain understanding of Lin Yuan because he had watched the battle between Lin Yuan and Han Qi. He hadn't expected Gao Feng's Sacred Source Lifeform to be able to solve the problem that had been troubling him. That was great. He did not know what the two functions of Gao Feng's Sacred Source Lifeform, the Memory-Eating Music Box, were. However, just the Memory-Eating Music Box alone was enough to restrict the other party's Sacred Source Lifeform's abilities, and two at once. This was enough to prove how powerful Gao Feng's Sacred Source Lifeform, the Memory-Eating Music Box, was. Lu Yifan had once heard from his master, Ji Changdeng, that Lord Cicada Cry had called his disciple's Sacred Source Lifeform the strongest support-type Sacred Source Lifeform. From the looks of it, it was indeed a well-deserved reputation. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lu Yifan nodded. In a while, when Zhong Zhe attacks, my Sacred Source Lifeform, the Sky Peach Green Bird, will immediately use its Elite Guard Return ability. Let the Elite Guard Soul coordinate with Zhong Zhe to attack. Try to get rid of Yan Ling, but among the 5 opponents, which 2 should we help Zhong Zhe restrain? Actually, Lu Yifan had the ability to take on the role of commander in this duel and give out orders. However, because he didn't understand the abilities of other phase Sacred Source Lifeforms, Lu Yifan had handed over command to Black Hand. Since he had already handed over command, he was only a member of the team. Lu Yifan would seek Lin Yuan's approval for any action. After all, there should only be one voice in a team. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied without hesitation. Gao Feng suddenly broke the combination of Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian. The 3 of them should panic for a moment. Without the combination, the 3 of them will be exposed to danger. When Big Brother Zhong attacks Yan Ling, he can first feint an attack on Kai Hua. Since the 3 of them are combining, without anyone, the combination will not be complete. Therefore, during the feint, even if Yan Ling is important, she will definitely protect Kai Hua. I have a feeling that there is something special about that white-haired youth. In a while, the 4 of us will restrain the Freedom Envoy, Qian Yu, and the white-haired youth. Leave the panicking Kai Hua and Yu Changjian to Big Brother Zhong. Yu Changjian's Sacred Source Lifeform, the Gorgon's Tooth, has the second ability, Tooth Gift. It can offer its source of power to a target. It will allow the target to obtain one of its abilities in a short period of time. If Yu Changjian's Sacred Source Lifeform, the Gorgon's Tooth, gives its ability to Yan Ling, she will not die immediately after her body is destroyed. As long as she is healed, she will recover. When that time comes, Big Brother Zong used the sacred source life form, Heaven's Blazing Fire, to continuously attack Yanling. In order to recover, Yanling will remove the Gorgon's Tooth's spirit boil ability. I will use the sword technique that I used against you to follow up. Zong Zhe nodded. It could be said that Lin Yuan's arrangement had given him 3 levels of help. Zong Zhe had given such a military order because he was the only one among the 3 who was most adept at single-target attacks. The Burning Sky Centipede's bloodline transformation might not have reached the Great Desolate Realm, but it had basically reached the limits of the true Desolate Realm. In particular, the Burning Sky Centipede had not only mastered the Red Plum Cloud Flame, but it had also mastered 2 other top-notch strange flames. The Red Plum Cloud Flame and the 2 top-notch strange flames would burst forth with power. After the Burning Sky Centipede's compression and fusion, even a Myth 3 Fey would have to avoid its sharpness. This was the source of Zhong Heng's confidence. As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, Lu Jie used his spiritual energy to summon an orange tumor Fey that looked like a sandworm. He summoned an orange-red, giant insect-type tumor Fey that looked like a sandworm. This insect-type carcinoma Fey was 5 meters long. Through true data, Lin Yuan learned the name of this tumor Fey, Fire Rock Sandworm. Through true data, Lin Yuan found out the name of this insect species carcinoma Fey, Fire Rock Sandworm. This kind of large tumor Fey especially liked to hide in the crevices of rocks. In the crevices of rocks, this kind of sandworm would enter a hibernating state. In this hibernating state, this sandworm would release a terrifying heat from its body. With its body as the base, it would form a terrifying active volcano that was connected to the Earth's mantle. Before the Fire Rock Sandworm woke up, the volcano would continuously erupt. 7017 K. Chapter 1748. At that time, a supervolcano suddenly appeared in the extreme north. After erupting continuously for nearly 2 years, the ecology of the extreme north had undergone tremendous changes. It had a great impact on the 3 major cities of the extreme north. At that time, the left minister's Wu Ming personally went to deal with this unnatural phenomenon. He discovered that there were many temperate plants growing on the icy plains of the extreme north. From this, one could see how powerful and terrifying the fire rock sandworms were. The fire rock sandworm was one of the few insect-type carcinoma Feys that didn't rely on splitting to reproduce and could rely on itself to create a huge impact. The flame rock sandworm that Lu Jie was currently in was the one that Wu Ming had found in the extreme north. However, the pinnacle silver fire rock sandworm in the extreme north had already become diamond/legend. Lu Jie took out this firestone sandworm with the intention of creating an active volcano. Through the fire elemental energy in the volcano, he created a favorable terrain for Zong Zhe and carried out hardcore support. Because this battle was going to take place in reality. Furthermore, it was in the Radiance Federation, and Lu Jie did not want to use such an extremely lethal method. This was because these methods would affect the Land of Radiance. The Wasteland's ruin insect's soil was very nutritious for insect species phase. However, the dueling grounds with a radius of 10 square kilometers were to be rebuilt. The land that had been infested by the ruin bugs had to be moved away and disposed of. Otherwise, as long as a little bit of this soil was left behind, it would infect other soils. It would also erode other soils. In Lu Jie's heart, using the wasteland ruin insect was already his bottom line. But now, Lu Jie knew very well that Zong Zhe's attack would determine the team's success or failure. At the same time, it was also the key to protecting the glory of Radiance. Thus, after considering the third point, Lu Jie summoned the insect-type carcinoma Fey, the fire rock sandworm. Lu Jie said to Lin Yuan, "Black, the crater formed by this fire rock sandworm is about 500 square meters. This fiery rock sandworm has been tormented by the insect queen's mental power for a long time. It's already exhausted. As long as it burrows into a crack in the stone, it will fall asleep in less than 10 seconds. Find 2 rocks underground, build a crack, and bury the fire rock sandworms inside. Before Zong Zhe makes his move, I'll have the insect queens stop tormenting the fire rock sandworms and urge them to sleep. It could be said that everyone had used their trump cards for Zhong Zhe's attack. At this moment, 5 figures appeared in the distant sea of flowers. Lu O, who had short white hair, walked at the front of the group. However, it was different from before. For sharp horns appeared on Lu O's head. Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, and Gao Feng all saw this scene. Lin Yuan, Lu Jie, and the others did not have much contact with demons. But Lu Yifan had always been dealing with demons. Especially during the last Myriad States conference, when Lu Yifan and the others were substitutes, they had seen the power of the Great Devil. He knew that a member of the Freedom Federation who could fuse with a devil and grow 4 horns on his head must have contracted a Great Devil. Lu Yifan's expression turned grim. For a B-rank spirit chi professional to possess a Great Devil, it had to be a Khanate Great Devil. He was one of the 7 Great Devils in the Devil Church. The 7 Great Devils were Khanate Great Devils, and the Great Desolate Grade bloodline of Desolation phase were similar. But compared to a Khanate Great Devil, the peach sky-green bird, who had just entered the Great Desolate Realm, was still lacking. There was still a certain gap. After all, there was still a long way to go before reaching the peak of the Great Desolate Realm. For the Freedom Federation to send out such a character, it seemed that they had been planning to lure him into their trap from the very beginning and kill him. According to the information given by the Holiness, everyone had set their sights on Qianyu, Kaihua, Yanling, and Yu Changjian. In the end, the white-haired youth, Lu O, was the Freedom Federation's biggest trump card. Fortunately, the Radiance Federation also had a trump card, black. It could be said that even now, Lu Yifan could not see through black. As the 5 Freedom Federation members advanced, Lin Yuan suddenly found himself unable to move. Lin Yuan immediately knew that Yanling had used the Sacred Source life form, the Gorgon Muscles ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis. In fact, when the 5 Freedom Federation members were destroying the Sea of Flowers, Lin Yuan could feel Red Thorn's anger. Morbius had already found out the abilities of the 3 Sacred Source life forms. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not let Red Thorn create another Sea of Flowers or use other offensive methods to attack the other party. However, Red Thorn's journey had been smooth sailing. It had never suffered such grievances. If Lin Yuan had not stopped it, the dozens of eyes of Relinquish hidden in the sea of sand would have shot out destructive rays. Lin Yuan did not mention this to Zhong Zhe. However, this was also a killer move that Lin Yuan had set up to help Zhong Zhe kill Yanling. When Chen Yu saw Lu Yifan and Lin Yuan, he quickly walked to the center of the team. He shouted at Lu Yifan, "I knew you would choose to fight in a positional battle. However, positional battles are useless against us." Lu Yifan did not waste time with Chen Yu. He waved his hand and summoned his gem witch. Seeing that Chen Yu was still being stubborn after summoning the gem witch, Lu Yifan did not say anything. Lu Yifan said, "We might not know each other very well, but we have fought many times. If it weren't for the 3 people behind you using some unknown method, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been able to make it here even after half an hour." Lu Yifan's words were not meant to insult Chen Yu. Chen Yu did not have the ability to directly kill the insect-type carcinoma Fei. If not for the other party using some method to kill the parasitic rot-flying locust, the other insect-type carcinoma phase and the insect swarm under the sea of sand that Lu Jie had set up earlier, they would definitely follow. Under such circumstances, Chen Yu would not be able to make it here in half an hour. Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian had been suppressed by Chen Yu along the way. Their dissatisfaction with Chen Yu had reached its peak. Lu Yifan's words were equivalent to affirming Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian's achievements and contributions to the team. The 3 of them could not help but straighten their backs when they heard Lu Yifan's words. Chen Yu's face darkened. In Chen Yu's opinion, Lu Yifan's words were equivalent to belittling him. Chen Yu said coldly, "Since we're already face to face, then whoever has the ability to do so, feel free to use it." Chen Yu shouted at the Cambrian Peiyu behind him. Cambrian's descent. In an instant, a huge wave of water elements surged out from the Cambrian fish's body. A sea area opened up around the Cambrian Peiyu. 7017K. Chapter 1749. The moment Lin Yuan saw Qian Yu, his entire body was paralyzed and couldn't move. However, Lin Yuan had already used Morbius True Data. He examined the giant shield-skinned fish behind Qian Yu. With one look, Lin Yuan thought to himself, I didn't expect a Fei's ancestral bloodline to be able to do so. When I examined Long Tao's Sea King Chalk Mosasaurus, Long Tao's Fei was crowned with the name White Chalk. Qian Yu's Fei was the same, crowning itself with the name Cambrian. When the Cambrian Pegasus used its exclusive skill, Cambrian's Descent, it created an undercurrent in the sea region. The temperature of the water was extremely cold, and it emitted a bone-piercing chill. If it wasn't for the insect species tumor Fei controlled by Lu Jie, it would have absorbed all the elemental energy. Apart from the fire elemental energy, it would have absorbed all the elemental energy. The water created by the Cambrian Pegasus would have submerged the entire duel arena. Even so, the seawater still surged toward Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, Gao Feng, Lu Jie, and the others. Lin Yuan and the others knew very well that they must not be involved in this water region. Otherwise, the Cambrian Pegasus, which was at the pinnacle of Myth 2, could casually stir the water. The surging water would form a huge pressure that could tear them into pieces. A Fei like this that could create a domain had an offensive ability within the domain. It wasn't something that spirit chi professionals could resist with their physical bodies. Therefore, Lin Yuan channeled a large amount of spiritual power through his feet into the source sand beneath his feet. The source sand, which had dug nearly 1,000 meters underground, instantly formed a sand wall. After the sand wall appeared, chain swords formed by radium-uranium steel emerged from the sand wall. The chain swords formed sturdy steel pillars that served as the best support for the sand wall. It prevented the sand wall from collapsing when it was washed away by the water. After this layer of sand wall appeared, layers of sand walls rapidly surged up from the flat ground. Qian Yu revealed a sneer when he saw the situation. Child's play. Cambrian Pegasus, use Overlord water pressure. Upon hearing Qian Yu's command, the Cambrian Pegasus body suddenly turned purplish red. An overlord of the Cambrian era, whose aura was enough to intimidate the four seas, filled the entire sea. In the sea, the Cambrian Peiyu that ruled the entire sea took a big breath, and the entire sea instantly shrank by half. Then, the Cambrian Peiyu opened its mouth. The water droplet he spat out was like a blue laser, shooting towards the sand wall. Under the impact of this stream of water, Lin Yuan realized something. Cracks appeared on the surface of the radium-uranium steel. Lin Yuan was immediately sure that the Cambrian petrified fish, which was at the peak of Myth 2, had casually executed a skill. He was stronger than Endless Summer, who was at Myth 3. First, it was because Endless Summer was a support-type Fei. Secondly, it must be related to Qian Yu's training of the Cambrian fish. The bloodline of this Cambrian Peiyu was able to revert to its ancestor to such a degree. It was hard to imagine how much resources Qian Yu had invested in this Cambrian Peiyu. He knew that he only needed the Cambrian peatfish to use the Overlord water pressure 2 more times. These chain swords made of radium-uranium steel would break. The entire sand wall would be completely destroyed. However, when facing the series of attacks from the Cambrian Peiyu, Lin Yuan did not wait helplessly for death. When the Cambrian Peiyu used Cambrian's Descent, Lu Jie had asked the insect queen to recall the Wasteland Ruin Worm. The Wasteland Ruin Worm was powerful because it could work with other insect-type carcinoma Feis. The rotting flying locust that had cooperated with the Wasteland Ruin Worm. He didn't know what method the other party used to kill him. The Wasteland Ruin Worm's hiding spot was not far from the huge fish's body, and it would definitely be affected by the sea. With the Wasteland Ruin Worm dead, the entire spirit guards did not have any left. Unlike the rotting flying locust, the spirit guards still had 2 of them, and it did not matter if they died. In addition, the Wasteland Ruin Worm had created enough wasteland, and it was enough for the insect swarm to use for a period of time. After recalling the Wasteland Ruin Worm, Lu Jie raised his hand and tossed out the insect-type carcinoma Fei that he had used against Long Tao, the floating nether hatworm. The floating nether hatworm's strength was that it could turn water into gelatin through its tentacles and seize control of the water. It could also control the phase in the water. If the floating nether hatworm wanted to show its might, it needed some protection. Before it gave birth to larvae and used its tentacles to create a large amount of mucus. The fragile floating nether hatworm did not have any ability to protect itself. As long as Qianyu discovered it, he could let the Cambrian Pegasus target it. The floating nether hatworm would become a corpse under the strong current. Therefore, Lu Jie arranged for the floating nether hatworm to hide in the yellow sand. Through his thoughts, he told Lin Yuan his thoughts. Lin Yuan used the yellow sand as a cover to protect the floating nether hatworm. This allowed the floating nether hatworm to produce larvae in the yellow sand that came into contact with the water. A large number of larvae grew tentacles and formed a gelatin that stuck a large area of the yellow sand at the bottom of the water together. Then, using the yellow sand as a cover, the larvae stretched out a large number of tentacles. Soon, the water that the Cambrian Pegasus had opened up became sticky. This water was originally supported by the Cambrian Pegasus body's water elemental energy. The water elemental energy was dozens of times denser than the natural sea. This caused the gelatin on the floating nether hatworm's body to become even stickier. Qianyu could no longer discover this. However, Qianyu didn't care at all. Qianyu recognized that this was an insect-type carcinoma Fei, the floating nether hatworm. If Qianyu encountered the Diamond X/Legend floating nether hatworm in a vast sea, he would definitely turn around and run. This was because if the Diamond X/Legend floating nether hatworm wanted to, it could turn the entire sea into gelatin, and nothing could survive. But in this small area, even the water became gelatin. The Cambrian Pegasus was constantly evolving, and its individual combat ability was extremely strong. Even if it was really entangled by the gelatin, it could easily break free. It just needed to put in a little more effort. The Cambrian Pegasus grade was to suppress the floating nether hatworm. What Qianyu wanted to do now? He wanted to let the Cambrian Pegasus create the water to break down the sandwall. Let everyone on the other side sink into the water. However, an accident occurred. The sea of flowers that was originally submerged by the sea did not wither. Instead, in the sea of flowers, red flowers that were 2 to 3 meters in diameter bloomed. Those red flowers had strange gill-shaped petals. As the gill-shaped petals opened and closed, strands of gills that were 5 to 6 meters long grew out. They were strange red flowers that looked like jellyfishes. After these ordinary jellyfish-like flowers appeared, they did not immediately attack. Instead, they lined up in a regular pattern in the water, as though they were waiting for something. This kind of situation was really too horrifying. 7017K. Chapter 1750. Qianyu immediately told the Cambrian Pekingese to use its skill, Water Burst. A red flower with digestive juices squeezed out by the water pressure. All of them were pressed to the bottom by a glacier and sealed in ice. However, this was not the end. The digestive juices polluted the entire area. There were simply too many specialized underwater units spawned by red thorn. The digestive fluid in red thorn was extremely toxic and corrosive. It could even corrode gold-grade spirit materials. In addition, the water world dimensional life form's unique decaying characteristics filled the entire water body. The Cambrian Peiyu did not feel anything, but Qianyu, Kaihua, Yu Changjian, and the others who were in the water were shocked. However, he felt an itch all over his body, as if he was being cut by a knife. The sacred source life form, Gorgon's tooth, suffered the same damage. He continued to split his body and reforge it. Yu Changjian sensed that the spiritual power in his body had already been depleted by half. He looked at Qianyu and made 2 hand gestures to him. Qianyu's face immediately revealed an unwilling expression. He could only ask the Cambrian Peiyu to cancel the Cambrian descend. But before that, Qianyu made up his mind. He said coldly, Cambrian Peatfish, use exclusive skill, Cambrian Tide. And the skill, Fish King Tail. After receiving Qianyu's instructions, the Cambrian petrified fish used its exclusive skill, Cambrian Tide. The sand wall on Lin Yuan's side seemed to have become the coast. Tiny waves rose from the bottom of the sea. The floating nether hatworm had painstakingly formed a zone of gel, and it also became a part of the waves. The waves were like hammers, and with just a few hits, they shattered the chain sword that was made of radium and uranium steel. It rushed toward Lin Yuan. It was as though the sea was about to devour Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, Lu Jie, and Gao Feng. As for the Cambrian peatfish's attack, the 5 of them had already thought of a countermeasure. Lu Yifan planned to use the small peach sky bluebird he had formed on the others to defend themselves. It was true that Qian Yu excelled in offense, but his defensive ability was not inferior to Qian Yu's offensive ability. However, the moment this body of water touched Lin Yuan's body, a huge blue lotus leaf appeared under Lin Yuan's feet. This lotus leaf seemed to have become the source of all water. It absorbed all the waves that had the intention to attack Lin Yuan. During the absorption process, 2 types of flower buds grew on the blue lotus leaf. The smaller one bloomed leisurely. The aura contained within a blue lotus flower. The Cambrian Peiyu was stunned. The gigantic blue flower bud showed no signs of blooming. It was as if he had not absorbed enough water elemental energy. The change in Lin Yuan's feet didn't just shock his teammates. Even Lin Yuan was astonished. Qian Yu and the rest, including Lu O, wore expressions of disbelief on their faces. He didn't understand what was going on. After all, no matter how much of a genius Qian Yu and Lu O were, they were the Radiance Federation's top young generation. The 2 of them simply did not have the qualifications to come into contact with the blessings of the favored spirit. However, Qian Yu, Lu O, and the others had no idea what was going on. However, Li Su and Goddess Lian, as the 2 lords of the Freedom Federation, understood the situation. Li Su looked at the Radiance Federation's His Holiness and spoke. To use such a method in a duel like this, it seems like cheating. Old Man Spacetime had been unhappy with Li Su for a long time. In his early years, he and Li Su had formed quite a grudge. One of Li Su's subordinates, who had followed the Spacetime Elder for decades, was killed by Li Su during a robbery of public resources. The Spacetime Elder said coldly, "You don't have any eye problems, do you? I can see that this is the blessing of the favored spirit." To be blessed by the favored spirit is Black's own ability. If you are capable, the Freedom Federation's people can also get the favored spirit's blessing. Even if it is the real Myriad States Convention, even if one has the blessing of all the favored spirits, there is no suspicion of cheating. This is Black's own ability. When Li Su heard Elder Time's words, he snorted. He knew that Qian Yu had kicked an iron plate. Qian Yu's talent was power offense type Fey affinity. Among spirit chi professionals, it was an extremely powerful talent that could contract any power offense type Fey. But for some reason, after nurturing Qian Yu, the goddess Lian only allowed him to contract water type source type life forms. This made Qian Yu very simple in terms of combat. In the face of Black, who had been blessed by the favored spirit, water type attacks below the creation breed level had no effect at all. Moreover, this blessing's protection had a certain range. As long as Black stood with the other 4 teammates, the other 4 teammates could also be indirectly protected. After the hostile water elements completely disappeared, the huge blue lotus leaves and flower buds under his feet all disappeared. Lin Yuan had really forgotten about the blessing that the blue lotus had given him. In a while, he would face any water-type attack from the opponent. He could rely on this blue lotus blessing to deal with it perfectly. Seeing that Yu Changjian kept urging him, Qian Yu finally let the Cambrian peatfish withdraw from the entire sea area. Otherwise, Qian Yu really wanted to let the Cambrian peatfish attack Black a few more times to study what kind of method Black had used. It could actually target him like this. After checking the Cambrian peatfish behind Qian Yu, Lin Yuan's gaze fell on Luo. Previously, Lu Yifan had communicated with the other 4 through his thoughts. Luo carried a great devil with him, for long horns grew out of his head. These 4 long horns were evidence that Luo had contracted a big devil. What puzzled Lin Yuan the most was why there was an identical version of himself next to Luo. Lin Yuan immediately used Morbius True data out of curiosity. He checked the other version of himself next to Luo. However, when he used Morbius True Data to examine his doppelganger next to Luo, he could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly widened. His eyes were filled with an incredulous expression. Lin Yuan could feel that Luo was a B-rank spirit chi professional. According to common sense, the limit of Luo's contracted phase was Diamond X/Fantasy V. It was impossible for Luo to have a myth-breed Fey. However, why did Luo's Fey exceed the limit of a spirit chi professional's role grade? Moreover, this Fey's ability and exclusive skill were too special. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this Fey's ability and exclusive skill were completely beyond the scope of ordinary Feys. If he had to compare, only Chimey, a Fey that gave birth to a son through its own bloodline, and Genius, a Fey that could connect to heaven on its own. Only Feys that used their spiritual energy as the price to explore the path of a Class 5 creation master could be compared to it. With this Fey, this battle was probably not going to be easy. Lin Yuan couldn't care so much anymore. He immediately shared the Fey's ability and exclusive skill with his other 4 teammates. 7017K. Chapter 1751. Fey Name, World Calamity Faceless Beast, Fey Species. Faceless Beast/Hairy Beast, Fey Grade. Suzerain, 10 out of 10. Fey Type. Curse, Spiritual, Soul, Fey Quality. Myth I Abilities Frowny Face Mother-Child Twin Body, Sub-Body. As a sub-body, it can store a portion of its energy in the mother's body. Through the mother's existence, it can replenish its own energy. Curse words. Curses the target through words, and determines the degree of the curse based on the target's mental strength. Curse heart. Curse the target in the heart, and the curse's effect will be doubled. During the curse, it will corrode the target's soul. Heart seizing soul. When the target's soul is completely cursed through curse heart, it can enter the target's body and let its soul control the target's body to control the target. Curse mark deepening. Deepen the target's own curse effect and bewitch the target's mind, soul, and spiritual energy to a certain extent. Nation destiny steal. On a piece of land, if it can trigger the nation's destiny in the land, it can steal the nation's destiny for its own. Stealing the nation's destiny requires burning one's lifespan as the price. Matriarch's protection. As a child, when you actively use this skill, you can obtain the buff of the mother's mind, spirit, and soul. When you burn your own bloodline, as long as the mother is willing, you can summon the mother over. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Faceless Face. Designate a target and absorb the target's blood, spiritual energy, and soul. It can change into the target's appearance and obtain all the target's abilities. Calamity Luck. Absorb the luck of the land and use it to enhance the effect of one's ability. Lifespan Offset. Determine one's own lifespan and use it to spy on other targets' lifespan. When sacrificing one's own lifespan, touch the target and take away the corresponding lifespan of the target. Understanding the World Calamity Faceless Beast's ability and exclusive skill. Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, Gao Feng, and Lu Jie. Just like when he first saw the World Calamity Faceless Beast's true data, they were all stunned. They didn't expect there to be such a Fey in this world. At the same time, Lu Yifan was very surprised. He didn't know what method Black had used to see a myth-breed Fey's ability and exclusive data at a glance. There were currently no creation masters among the 5 Radiance envoys. Lu Yifan wasn't clear about the abilities of creation masters. But no matter what, even a Class 4 creation master wouldn't be able to see through a myth-breed Fey's abilities and exclusive skill, right? Zhong Zhe, Lu Jie, and Gao Feng fared better than Lu Yifan. Lin Yuan was the champion of the Nyx Assembly's civil and martial arena. When Zhong Zhe used his trump card at the Great Night Assembly, Zhong Zhe's face changed. He was already at the standard of a primary Class 4 creation master. However, he had lost to Lin Yuan back then. There was a difference of nearly 10 minutes between them. This made Zhong Zhe know that Lin Yuan's creation master standard was definitely far superior to his. Right now, Zhong Zhe could only see that the other him beside Lu O was a Fey. However, he wasn't able to see any useful information at the first moment. In order to see through a myth-breed Fey's abilities and exclusive skill, Lin Yuan was probably a pinnacle class 4 creation master. After a short moment of surprise, Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe, and the others had serious expressions. Putting everything else aside, Lu O's World Calamity Beast's ability, Nation Luck Steal, and exclusive skill, Disaster Luck. All of them would affect Hui Yao's providence. Therefore, no matter what, they couldn't let the World Calamity Beast use this ability and exclusive skill. Therefore, they had to end the battle quickly. Lin Yuan had seen true data and already knew that the World Calamity Beast was Lu O's Fei. Why was Lu O, a B-rank spirit chi professional, able to raise the World Calamity Beast's grade to Suzerain X, Myth I? That was because this phaseless beast that brought calamity to the world was a child. It had passed the normal ability, child-mother twin body. By storing energy in the mother's body, it had further broken its own limits. The World Calamity Beast's curse words and curse heart were both curse effects. One was a spirit-type curse, while the other was a charm-type curse. Of the two types of curses, one targeted spiritual power, and the other targeted the opponent's soul. 4 spirit chi professionals below B rank, even if they had the means to defend against spiritual energy, they wouldn't be able to do so. However, the protection against the soul had always been a weakness. If the myth-breed World Calamity Beast used Curse Heart on anyone on his side, even if it was Lu Yifan, it might succeed. Lin Yuan had always been confident when the target's attack targeted the soul. However, he wasn't sure if he could use Morbius Calm Heart to block the World Calamity Beast's erosion of his soul power through Curse Heart. Curse-type Fays were very rare. This World Calamity Beast was a Curse-type, Spirit-type, and Soul-type Fey. It could be said that it was Lin Yuan's first time encountering a Curse-type Fey. The World Calamity Beast Queen's Fey belonged to the Phaseless Beast family. This meant that the World Calamity Beast was the same as Genius Chimey. It was a Fey that had taken a path that others hadn't taken. As for the World Calamity Beast's platinum ability, Seize the Soul, it was a further enhancement of Curse Heart. While cursing the target's soul, it could control the target and turn it into its puppet. Curse Deepening could deepen the curse effect that the target had to endure. It could also capture the target's mind, soul, and spiritual energy to a certain extent. It was an enhancement of the World Calamity Beast's curse ability. It allowed curse words and curse heart to take effect faster. The World Calamity Beast's suzerain ability, Broodmother's Protection, was a kind of reverse summoning ability. It could obtain the Broodmother's spiritual power, soul, and spiritual energy enhancement. It could also summon the Broodmother by burning its bloodline. Lin Yuan didn't know how strong the World Calamity Beast's Broodmother was. However, one thing was certain. The World Calamity Beast's Broodmother was definitely stronger than the Broodmother. He had to pay attention to this ability. The World Calamity Beast's exclusive skill, Faceless Face. It was the reason why the World Calamity Beast could transform into Lu O's appearance. At that moment, the World Calamity Beast had obtained all of Lu O's strength. The exclusive skill, Disaster Luck, and Nation Luck Steal. These two abilities were very similar to Chimey producing a sun in its body and Genius using its tail to connect to the heavens. They were abilities that ordinary Fays couldn't possess. The final exclusive skill, Calculate Lifespan Offset. It was the same as using its own lifespan as the price to kill the target. 7017K. Chapter 1752. Morbius might be able to see a Fey's abilities and true data, but it couldn't see a Fey's lifespan. Thus, Lin Yuan wasn't sure how long the World Calamity Phaseless Beast's lifespan was. If the World Calamity Phaseless Beast's lifespan was short, the exclusive skill would cancel it out, and it wouldn't have any practical effect. However, if the Phaseless Calamity Beast's lifespan was very long, then the exclusive skill lifespan count offset would allow the Phaseless Calamity Beast to have the ability to skip ranks and kill pinnacle experts in the world. For example, his master, the Moon Empress, was only left with 4 years of lifespan. If the Phaseless Beast could use its exclusive skill, Calculate Lifespan, to counteract its attack on the Moon Empress, then the Phaseless Beast would be able to attack the Moon Empress. The World Calamity Phaseless Beast only needed to consume 4 years of its lifespan to drag the Moon Empress to her death. Of course, When facing a peak expert of the world, it wouldn't be easy for the phaseless beast to use its exclusive skill, calculate lifespan. After all, to use an exclusive skill, lifespan calculation offset, he needed to make contact with the target. It was simply too difficult to come into contact with the body of a contemporary powerhouse. As long as the Moon Empress didn't want anyone to get close to her, unless the opponent was stronger than the Moon Empress. Otherwise, there was no way to get close to the Moon Empress. However, the World Calamity Faceless Beast's faceless appearance could deceive its target. As long as that expert wasn't a creation master, the World Calamity Faceless Beast could become the closest person to that expert. Deceive the target's trust. Once he got close, he would kill his target. Lin Yuan and the others had been scheming against Yan Ling. However, how could Lu O not think of scheming against Lin Yuan and the others? Originally, Lu O's target was Lu Yifan. At the thought of Lu Yifan possessing a Myth 2 Fei, the Freedom Federation had gathered information on him. Lu Yifan's Fei, the Yin-Yang 2 Yang Bulls, had a soul defense effect. Therefore, to be on the safe side, Lu O gave up on having the phaseless beast target Lu Yifan. He made his choice between Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, and Lin Yuan. As for Gao Feng, he was a pure support. The phaseless beast that controlled Gao Feng was not very useful. Secondly, due to the restrictions set by the Radiance clan previously, they were unable to attack Gao Feng before the other 4 members fell. Finally, after some consideration, Lu O fixed her gaze on Lin Yuan. Zhong Zhe himself was cursed, so there was nothing to fear. Up until now, the Freedom Federation had yet to obtain the method to break the curse of misfortune. Therefore, Lu O did not think that the Radiance Federation would have any good solution to the curse. In the end, the Freedom Federation had always had more Creation Master resources than the Radiance Federation. Moreover, the Freedom Federation had already possessed an expert capable of purifying the Eternal Heart 5 years ago. Otherwise, the Freedom Federation wouldn't have placed a Class 5 Creation Master's path aside and not used it. Lu Jie's ability to control the insect-type carcinoma Fei for combat was worthy of attention. However, the competition venue was too small, and the insect-type carcinoma Fei would not be of much use. He was already standing in front of Lu Jie. If Lu Jie summoned the weak insect-type carcinoma Feis, it would be no different from personally killing them. Thus, Lu O chose Black, the opponent who had displayed his all-round talent in the battle against Han Qi. Lu O did not know that his phaseless beast data had already been clearly understood by the Radiance's side. Yan Ling used the Gorgon Muscle's Spirit Boiling Paralysis ability. Black, who had an astonishing amount of spiritual energy in its body, was paralyzed and could not move at all. This was a good time to target Black. Lu O immediately gave an order to the phaseless beast. He ordered the phaseless beast to deepen its incantation ability on Lin Yuan. Next, it would be Malicious Words and Malicious Heart. After 3 sets of abilities were used, Lin Yuan's eyes immediately turned sluggish. It was as though something had drilled into his heart and brain. It was bewitching and invading his mind, spirit, and soul. Under such corrosion, Lin Yuan no longer had the ability to take the initiative to execute Morbius' Calm Heart ability. Morbius was already awake, and it executed Calm Heart 3 times on Lin Yuan. After Lin Yuan was controlled, Lu Yifan, Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, Gao Feng, and the others were alarmed. However, they knew that this wasn't the time to be loyal. Lu Yifan yelled out, "Zhong Zhe, act according to the plan. Leave Black to me." After speaking, Lu Yifan summoned his main phase, the Yin-Yang Dual Bull and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat. After these 2 pinnacle Myth 2 phase appeared, they executed their abilities on Lin Yuan to defend his mind and soul. As for the spirit, the Yin-Yang Dual Bull and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat didn't have the ability to defend against the spirit. Lin Yuan could only deal with all of this by himself. Upon hearing Lu Yifan's instructions, Zhong Zhe immediately summoned his sacred source life form, the Heaven Scarlet Fire, as well as his main Fei, the Burning Sky Roar. Zhong Zhe's reincarnation flame beast and the fairy source-type life form, the Blue Venom Flame Puppet. Their strength had increased compared to when they had fought Lin Yuan. However, Zhong Zhe didn't summon them. First, it was because Zhongzhe was going to carry out a series of surprise attacks. It would take too much time to summon too many Fays and create a huge scene. It would be easy for the other party to defend. Second, Zhongzhe planned to pour all of his spiritual power into the Burning Sky Roar. He would let the Burning Sky Roar and the Heaven's Scarlet Fire work together to execute his strongest attack. Qianyu was pinned down by Lin Yuan. Lu Jie was now commanding the insect swarm hidden under the sand to attack Qianyu. They did their best to hinder Qianyu's footsteps. Lu O was facing Lin Yuan, who was in a deadlock with the phaseless beast. It was the best time for him to attack. No matter how worried Zhongzhe was, he knew what his current responsibility was. What he should do was the best choice. The Burning Sky Roar had originally been an orange-red creature that looked like a rabbit. However, the Burning Sky Roar had grown much larger. It was no longer suitable for standing on Zhongzhe's shoulder. The Burning Sky Roar's body burned with a magnificent crystal-like flame. This kind of solid flame seemed to be able to burn a hole in the sky if a wisp of it was released into the sky. This flame was even brighter than the one on the Burning Sky Roar's body. It appeared in Zhongzhe's palm. Zhongzhe threw the 5-star sacred source life form, the Heaven's Scarlet Fire, into the sky. He immediately used the Heaven's Scarlet Fire's ability. Scarlet Flame Heavenly Country. Previously, when he had fought Lin Yuan. When Zhongzhe used the Heaven's Scarlet Flame Heavenly Country, he could only summon 21 Scarlet Flame Angels armed with weapons. But now, the Scarlet Flame Heavenly Country had changed greatly. The original Scarlet Flame Heavenly Country was a circular door. The Crimson Flaming Angel had emerged from the circular door. At that moment, the circular door in the sky suddenly cracked. Within the cracked door, a heavenly country formed by flames appeared in the sky. 7017K. Chapter 1753. The flames dyed the sky above the dueling ground a fiery red. A city in the clouds faintly appeared within the flames. In the center of the city was a huge altar. On each side of the altar stood a flaming angel with 6 pairs of wings and a scepter in hand. One by one, the 2 winged angels emerged from the altar with weapons in their hands. After these 2 winged angels appeared, they arranged themselves in an orderly formation in the sky. More than 70 winged flaming angels appeared with weapons in their hands. 2 war chariots made of flames appeared on the altar. The 2 6-winged angels leaped onto the war chariots. Like a commander, he stood in front of the 76 winged flaming angels. At that moment, Zhongzhe used another ability of the Heaven's Crimson Fire, Heaven's Adjudication. With Heaven's Adjudication, the burning effect of each flaming angel's attack could not be blocked. Furthermore, the attack had a serious injury effect that would reduce the target's recovery. This ability was used in conjunction with the Heaven's Crimson Fire's first ability, Scarlet Country of Heaven. It replenished the flaming angels' attack power. Their overall strength had undergone a huge increase. Zhongheng did not stop after using the 2 abilities of the Heaven's Crimson Fire. Zhongzhe continued to exert strength and ordered the Burning Sky Scorching Centipede to use its exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Country. In an instant, the entire space was filled with fire elements. The entire ground was covered with bricks and tiles made of flames. These bricks and tiles formed by the flames formed a domain. Within the domain, the fire damage effects would constantly stack. After using Fire Fantasy Country, the Burning Sky Scorching Centipede received a huge boost. Lu Yifan had just summoned the Yin-Yang 2 modes ox and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat to assist him. While helping him resist the Calamity Phaseless Beast, Lu Yifan ordered the Peach Sky Bluebird, which had been supporting the insect swarm and dragging Qianyu, to use Elite Guard's return. After receiving Lu Yifan's command, the Peach Sky Bluebird let out a sorrowful cry. The peach tree let out a sorrowful cry. Half of the peach fruits on the peach tree that had just borne withered in an instant. They turned into dregs and fell to the ground. This was because the Peach Sky Bluebird had absorbed the energy within the peach fruits. The reason why the Heavenly Peach Green Bird could summon the Jing Guard was because it had absorbed the Jing Guard's soul. The more energy the Heavenly Peach Green Bird used, the stronger the elite guard would be after it used its skill. At this moment, the peach sky green bird was already doing its best to ensure the strength of the elite guard that was summoned. Lu Yifan knew very well what Zhong Zhe's attack represented. If Zhong Zhe's attack succeeded, the other side would lose one of their members. It would be much easier for him to destroy the 3 sacred source life forms. If Zhong Zhe didn't succeed and used up all the spiritual power in his body, he wouldn't be able to escape. Even with Gao Feng's help, his combat power would definitely not be as good as before in a short period of time. Therefore, this attack had to succeed no matter what. Amid the sorrowful cries of the heavenly peach blue bird, a fiery red bird beast that was about the same size as the heavenly peach blue bird appeared. He appeared beside the peach heavenly green bird. After this bird beast appeared, it flew around the heavenly peach blue bird. Then, raging flames ignited on his body. Fire elements gushed out of this fiery red bird spirit as if they were free. This red bird was a fire-type fae, the elite guard. This elite guard was formed from souls and energy. Before its energy was exhausted, the elite guard would not vanish. The elite guard flew toward Zhong Zhe, and a huge flame shadow appeared behind it. The flame shadow enveloped Zhong Zhe, causing the Burning Sky Roar's exclusive skill, Flame Fantasy Country, to instantly ignite a 5-foot-tall flame. Chime had also communicated with the sun. It did its best to fuse the power of the sun into the Flame Fantasy Country. It raised the temperature of the Flame Fantasy Country. As a desolate bloodline fae, the Burning Sky Roar had many offensive methods. However, Zhong Zhe's abilities were useless. After injecting all the spiritual power in his body into the Burning Sky Roar's body, the Burning Sky Roar's legs stomped and pounced at Kaihua. At the same time, the Burning Sky Roar used its exclusive skill, 8 Refinements Exceptional Flames. 8 exceptional flames revolved around the Burning Sky Roar's body. Among these 8 exceptional flames, there were 3 Class 5 exceptional flames. Zhong Zhe let the Burning Sky Roar use up 5 high-grade exceptional flames and 2 top-grade exceptional flames. He used fire refinement to amplify the red plum cloud fire. The red plum cloud fire, which originally had a red plum blossom phenomenon, was now burning a plum garden. The red plum cloud fire's characteristics were temperature and combustion. These 2 flames' most basic abilities were the foundation of the fire's destructive power. Kaihua turned pale with fright when he saw the Burning Sky Roar pouncing toward him. Yu Changjian had attacked because of Qianyu. He was affected by the toxicity and corrosiveness of red thorn's digestive fluid. There was not much spiritual power left in Yu Changjian's body. Yu Changjian was currently replenishing the spiritual power he had expended. This was when the trio's sacred source life forms were at their weakest. If it were any other time, Kaihua wouldn't even dodge if someone attacked him. However, Kaihua was not sure if Yu Changjian's sacred source life form, Gorgong's tooth, could withstand this attack. If it were Yu Changjian or Yan Ling, they could still merge with the middle-rank devil in their bodies. They could increase their physical attributes. However, Kaihua had yet to obtain a devil. He could not merge with it even if he wanted to. Kaihua hurriedly summoned his 3 fays. He allowed his 3 fays to block in front of him. He then looked at Yu Changjian, who was the closest to him, and shouted, "Ah, Jian!" After Kaihua summoned his 3 main fays, Yanling immediately used algae chain flow on her sacred source life form, the Gorgong clam. It connected Kaihua's 3 fays together. Then, Yanling gritted her teeth and summoned a strange plant. This plant had many purple flowers growing on it. It looked very beautiful. The most special thing was that there was a huge spherical stamen in the middle of the petals. There were many small thorns on the stamen. Under the illumination of the light, the thorns appeared to be translucent. Yanling shouted, "Purple resentment demon flower, use 1,000 needles spit and exclusive skill, death substitution cling." After receiving Yanling's instructions, the Diamond X/Fantasy V purple resentment demon flower swayed and contracted its petals. It spat out the huge purple stamen at the Burning Sky Roar. Immediately after, the purple resentment demon flower spat out its stamen and tightly bound Kaihua. As a basic class 4 creation master, Zhongzhe could not see the abilities and exclusive skills of a myth breed Fae. However, a fantasy breed Fae's exclusive skill could distinguish one or two. Therefore, Zhongzhe knew the effects of Yanling's purple resentment demon flower, Thousand Needles Spit, and Death Substitution Cling. 7017K. Chapter 1754. Thousand Needles Eruption was an AoE skill that dealt poison and would damage. The purple resentment demonic flower spat out its stamen. The small thorns in the stamen dealt pure wood damage. It has armor penetration, bleeding, and penetration effects. If it hit the target, it would immediately turn the target into a bloody person. If he did not receive treatment in time, he would die from the loss of blood. These seemingly transparent needles would penetrate the Fae's fur and enter its body once they were shot. It will instantly suck blood and swell, opening the wound. A hollow tube is used for bloodletting. The blood that flowed out could fuse with the purple pollen in the stamens of the purple resentment demonic flower. This pollen contained a variety of poisons, all of which had a chilling effect on living beings. Han Chi's main Fae, the nether bamboo viper, was not like how Lin Yuan had used the source sand grains to accept the spirit. It took a long time for the poison to take effect on the target. The purple resentment demon flower that Yanling summoned was extremely ferocious and had extremely strong offensive capabilities. However, Zongheng did not even let the burning sky roar dodge. First, the heaven-burning roar was strengthened by the endless Sanskrit sound sparrows. The elite guard summoned by the heavenly peach-green bird continued to use the will of the Flame Emperor to increase the damage of the fire element. In addition, the Burning Sky Centipede had used its exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Country, 3 top-notch heavenly flames and 5 high-grade heavenly flames to enhance itself. At that moment, the Burning Sky Roar had gathered Lu Yifan and Lu Jie's power, and its strength was far beyond that of a fantasy breed. It was strong enough to compete with a peak Myth 2 Fae. Therefore, before the wooden spikes could even touch the body of the Burning Sky Centipede, they were burned to ashes by the red plum meteorite fire that enveloped the Burning Sky Centipede. Under the burning of the flames, it was difficult for the stamens to infect the sky-burning serpent. The attack that Yanling commanded the purple resentment demonic flower could basically be regarded as ineffective damage. Actually, Yanling didn't think that this attack would be of much use. The purpose of Yanling's attack was just a feint. She wanted to take this opportunity to see the strength of the Burning Sky Centipede. Yanling's most important purpose in summoning the purple resentment demon flower was to let it use its exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, to protect Kaihua. The effect of the purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, was to protect one target, immobilizing the target. However, when the other party suffered a fatal attack, he could sacrifice his own life to die in place of the other party. The death of a main Fae would have a huge impact on the spirit chi professionals. Yanling was very clear about this. Under normal circumstances, Yanling would only use the purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Cling, on herself. But the current situation was beyond Yanling's control. After all, this was a life-and-death battle with the Radiance Federation. Even if Yanling did not have much of a sense of honor, she was more concerned about herself. But Yanling couldn't afford to lose. If they lost, it would be just like what they had said before the match. Qian Yu and Luo might be fine, but the 3 of them would definitely die. Other than her opponent, Yanling was even more afraid of Luo, who had merged with the demon. At this time, Luo had 4 horns on his head, but there were no ghost tattoos on his face. He hadn't completely merged with the Great Devil in his body. All he did was trigger the aura of the Great Devil in his body. Yanling had never seen Luo completely fused with the Great Devil. However, he knew which Great Devil Luo had contracted. Once combined, under the influence of the Great Devil's will, Luo would probably go crazy from hunger. If Kaihua died, the trio's joint attack would be broken. Then she and Yu Changjian would likely become Luo's delicious meal. As for herself and Yu Changjian, they couldn't resist Luo at all because they had contracted a demon. The suppression of a great devil on a middle-rank demon was simply too strong. After contracting a demon, their souls had long been affected by the demon. Yanling didn't know that when she had commanded the purple resentment demon flower to use its exclusive skill, death substitution cling, Zhongzhe had revealed a smile on his face. From the beginning, Zhongzhe's target was not Kaihua but Yanling. After listening to him, Zhongzhe had feigned an attack on Kaihua. He didn't expect to obtain such a huge harvest. At that moment he had already gone crazy. He commanded the insect swarm to pounce on Qianyu's main fae, the Cambrian Pegasus. In order to be considerate of his teammates, Qianyu had always been fearful when commanding the Cambrian Pegasus. Against this kind of water attribute fae that relied on a domain to fight, unless his teammates also used water attribute faes and could cooperate with him. Otherwise, they would be an obstacle. Due to Lu Jie's earlier command of the Insect Queen, he had produced a large batch of plasma caterpillars and lightning-gathering moths. The plasma caterpillars spat out plasma, while the lightning-gathering moths gathered the plasma in their bodies. After a long period of accumulation, the accumulated energy attacks from hundreds of lightning-gathering moths caused the sea of flowers to tremble. Lu Jie immediately hit the Cambrian Pegasus with the attacks that these plasma caterpillars and lightning-gathering moths had accumulated for 15 minutes. It actually created a gap in the Cambrian Pegasus' shield skin. Immediately after, the blade worms were in front, and the flesh-mincing blade insects were behind. The hidden ladybug soared into the air and was ready to use its body to block any attack that might fly over at any time. At that moment, the sea of insects had completely moved. Under Lu Jie's command, all the insects were not afraid of death. Although Lu Jie had recalled the wasteland ruin insects, the wasteland and the mycelial tapeworms were still there. The seriously injured insects relied on the wasteland to replenish their energy and continue to attack. The dead insects would immediately be possessed by the mycelial tapeworms and launch successive attacks. Facing the countless insect swarms, Qianyu might not be helpless. However, it gave Qianyu a terrifying feeling. If the youth from the Radiance faction controlling the Insect Queen was an A-rank spirit chi professional, the strength of this insect swarm would probably have a qualitative leap. By then, would he still be able to deal with it like he was now? He noticed that Zhongzhe was attacking Kaihua. Qianyu, who was trapped by Lu Jie, wanted to summon another fae to help. However, he did not expect a cold light to slash at him from within the insect swarm. Immediately after, a giant conger eel that was over 400 meters long appeared in front of Qianyu. The conger eel's long tail swung forward and hit the orchid petal blade centipede that the dead soul nightmare worm was residing in. The orchid petal blade centipede was smashed into meat paste. As for the dead soul nightmare worm, when the orchid petal blade centipede was smashed into meat paste, it had already used the soul-attaching death seed and went into hiding again. It was Lu Jie's sudden attack that made Qianyu want to help Kaihua summon the fae. Qianyu started to defend himself. At that moment, without giving the Freedom Federation's 5 members any time to react, the fiery rock sandworm, which had been tortured by the Insect Queen, finally closed its eyes and fell into a deep sleep in the crevice under the sand. Immediately after, a volcano suddenly burst open under the feet of Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian. 7017 K. Chapter 1755. The huge crater had a diameter of 30 meters. In fact, the moment the crater appeared, Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian had the chance to escape with their faes. No matter how fast the fiery rock sandworm could release energy, it would take more than 10 seconds. To change the terrain, connect the mantle, and form a volcano, it would take more than 10 seconds. However, Kaihua had been hit by Yanling's purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, death substitution. Yanling was unable to forcefully undo the skill, or Kaihua was hit by a powerful blow and had the purple resentment demon flower die in his place. The purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, death substitution, was very difficult to undo. Yanling did not have any good ideas. The exclusive skill was not as simple as just entangling the target. The purple resentment demon flower had to mobilize the energy in its body to form a protective layer on the target. It was easy to form the protective layer, but it was not so easy to remove it. Yanling and Yu Changjian could not leave Kaihuo behind. Yanling and Yu Changjian could not leave Kaihuo behind. If something happened to Kaihuo, the 3 sacred source life forms would break. The combination of 3 sacred source life forms was broken. Even if he won in the end, he would lose his future. Hence, Yanling and Yu Changjian accompanied Kaihuo and stood within the range of the crater. They did not escape. Yanling's sacred source life form, the Gorgon muscle, had a limit to its algae chain flow ability. Once it exceeded 100 meters, the algae chain flow ability would weaken. Because the crater of the volcano was in the sand, the fine sand was easier to smelt than the earth and rocks. Moreover, the fiery rock sandworm was at Diamond X/Legend. Lu Jie had never used a fiery rock sandworm before, so he could only estimate its strength. The fiery rock sandworm had given him a huge surprise. The crater was 300 meters wide. From the size of the crater, one could tell how much fire elemental energy the eruption would provide for Zhongzhe. Logically speaking, before the duel, both sides were restricted from attacking Yu Changjian and Gao Feng. The crater had included Yu Changjian, so it was against the rules. However, there was a prerequisite to this restriction. That was to determine whether Gao Feng and Yu Changjian had the ability to escape from the range of the attack when faced with an area of effect attack. If there was, then the area of effect attack was not against the rules. This was also why Qian Yu had commanded the Cambrian Pierfish to attack Lu Yifan's group of 5. Yanling, Kaihuo, and Yu Changjian did not know how the volcanic crater beneath their feet formed. I thought it was the ability of one of Zhongzhe's phase. According to the information he had, only Zhongzhe's phase were all fire type, and his sacred source life forms were all fire type. The Diamond X/Legend insect type Carcinoma Fey, fire rock sandworm, revealed its destructive side. A stream of black and gray gas spewed out from the crater. Just this breath of air was enough to cause Yu Changjian's sacred source life form, Gorgon's tooth, to crack twice. Yu Changjian's face was filled with shock. In fact, the gas spewing out of the crater was not ordinary steam. Instead, under the calcination of the sand, a portion of it was sublimated into gas and sprayed out first. The temperature of the gas was almost the same as the temperature of the lava. After spitting out the gas, the fire rock sandworm, which had not slept for a long time, happily slept and released more and more energy. Lava spewed out of the crater violently, putting immense pressure on Yu Changjian. The spiritual power in Yu Changjian's body was already depleted. As the Gorgon's tooth continued to crack and reform, Yu Changjian felt the spiritual power in his body drop and shouted to Yanling and Kaihuo. "We have to think of a way to leave the range of this volcano. Qian Yu, Lu O, what are you two doing? Come and help the 3 of us." Lu O frowned because she realized that the phaseless beast had entered Black's body and was in a stalemate with it. This situation made Lu O secretly apprehensive. The phaseless beast was a suzerain X/Myth I Fei. Black was only a B-rank spirit chi professional. Its mind, spirit, and soul should not be able to contend with the phaseless beast. With the phaseless beast's abilities, Calamity Words, Calamity Heart, and Deepen the Curse Mark, Black should have already lost its mind and soul. Black should have long been seized and become the target of the phaseless beast's control. Lu O's mind was on the phaseless beast and was constantly injecting spiritual power into it. She had no time to be distracted. Qian Yu summoned his other main Fei, the Deep Freeze King Eel. He wanted to help Yanling, Kaihuo, and Yu Changjian. Qian Yu's Deep Freeze King Eel was an extremely powerful aquatic Fei. Originally, there were a total of 12 races in the sea region that were competing for the 8 clans of the Sea Empire. The Deep Freeze King Eel was one of them. Upon hearing Yu Changjian's request for help, Qian Yu wanted to let the Deep Freeze King Eel go and help. Unexpectedly, Lu Jie seemed to have gone crazy. He let those plasma moths carry the lightning-gathering caterpillars and fly over to him. Qian Yu was preparing to let the Cambrian Pegasus open up a small area of the sea region. He wanted to kill these insects that were sending themselves to death. However, he did not expect Lu Jie to decisively use the Insect Queen's exclusive skills, Insect Swarm Frenzy and Blast Recovery. The plasma caterpillars carried by the lightning-gathering moths were like bombs. Under the explosion from the inside out, it was a little strenuous for the Cambrian Pegasus to hold on. After all, when Lu Jie had produced this batch of lightning-gathering moths and plasma caterpillars, he had set them at Diamond X/Fantasy I. The self-destruction of hundreds of Diamond/Fantasy Breed phase would also cause damage to Myth Breed phase. Therefore, when he saw those hidden armor ladybugs, flesh-mincing blade insects, and hurricane owlet moths rushing toward him without any regard for their lives, the insects that had obtained the frenzy effect released an energy from the inside out. Qianyu knew that this insect swarm was preparing to collectively self-destruct. Qianyu was a little flustered. Let alone a Myth 2 Fey, even a Myth 3 Fey would find it hard not to suffer serious injuries from the self-destruction of hundreds of thousands of insects. However, Qianyu could not dodge. This was because Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian were behind him. Qianyu was not sure if Zhong Zei's attack could injure Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian. However, if this insect swarm exploded on Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian, at least 2 out of the 3 would die. Qianyu had no choice but to let the Deep Frost King eel use extreme cold to freeze the water area opened up by the Cambrian Pegasus. It was used to block these alien insects. However, Qianyu did not know. The insects above the sea of sand were not all. There were more insects below the sea of sand. After Black was controlled by Luo's phaseless beast, Qianyu relaxed his vigilance against the sea of sand under his feet. 7017K. Chapter 1756. But now, the alien insects under the sea of sand had dug out a huge sand cave. The entire block of ice sank into the bottom of the sea of sand. Then, a series of explosions sounded under the sea of sand. Lu Jie used Blast Recycle to recover his spiritual energy. The dimensional light crocodile's abdomen sprayed out a large number of insects again. However, the insects that were sprayed out this time were mainly escape ladybugs and hurricane owlet moths. It was obvious that after this strike, Yi Chen's expression changed drastically. Lu Jie had to switch from an offensive position to a support position. It was all thanks to Gao Feng's help that Lu Jie was able to make the sea of insects grow to such a scale. Lin Yuan had told Gao Feng not to be stingy with his spiritual power. Gao Feng had almost squeezed out all the spiritual power in his body for Lu Jie. The flowers of the 2 spirit spring lilies and the breeze hibiscus showed signs of withering under extreme overdraft. During the Radiance 100 sequences test, the Radiance 100 sequence would not be able to survive. Gao Feng could single-handedly lead an army of 10,000 people. It was the massive amount of spiritual energy and the protein that Lu Jie had the Insect Queen continuously replenish. Only then did he set up this sea of insects that was hard to replicate. This attack was the limit of Lu Jie's control over the swarm. It would be fine if Lu Jie didn't know about the phaseless beast's abilities and exclusive skills. Lu Jie, who had learned about the phaseless beast's exclusive skill and ability from Lin Yuan, knew very well what kind of danger Lin Yuan was currently facing. Therefore, Lu Jie unleashed this attack in a fit of rage. Qianyu was unable to support Kai Hua, Yan Ling, and Yu Changjian. At this moment, Zhong Zei's attack arrived. At this moment, the sky-burning Ho turned around. The attack that was originally aimed at Kai Hua turned to attack Yan Ling. At this moment, Yan Ling immediately knew that the 3 of them had been deceived. At such a critical moment, Yan Ling didn't have much time to think. He immediately merged with the middle-rank devil in his body. Yan Ling's appearance was quite outstanding, but she was not considered the best among her peers. However, he was definitely at the top. At this moment, Yan Ling's fair skin turned dark green. One after another, dark green vines appeared beneath his feet. Yan Ling suddenly grew taller by a few centimeters. The 2 pairs of horns on her head were like a pair of wooden thorns, and her eyes were vertical, filled with a bewitching aura. At that moment, Yu Changjian had also merged with the demon in his body. Yu Changjian's originally slender body swelled up as white bone spurs drilled out of his body. They were all over Long Sword's hands and legs. In his mouth, he bared a few sharp teeth and rolled out his lips. Yu Changjian immediately used his ability after merging with the demon. Under the scorching heat of the volcano, Yu Changjian's spiritual power and life force actually increased tremendously. Zhongzai's eyes narrowed. As expected, it wouldn't be that easy. His opponent was one of the top experts of the Freedom Federation's younger generation, so he would always have an unexpected trump card. The demon had fused with Yu Changjian, but Zhongzai was unable to determine what kind of creature this demon was. However, he knew that Yu Changjian was performing an ability similar to absorbing damage and converting it into vitality and spiritual power. Zhongzai saw that the bone spurs on Yu Changjian's arms and legs were continuously falling off. It seemed that Yu Changjian would not be able to use this ability after the bone spikes were used up. But at this time, Yu Changjian's recovered spiritual power was enough to support the casting of the Tooth of Gorgon's ability 7 or 8 times. As for Yanling, she was not good at defense. Yanling fused with the demon just to increase her defense. Zhongzai had never thought that this attack would be so easy. Zhongzai was fighting for a chance to turn the situation around. For this chance, Zhongzai had given it his all. Zhongzai injected the last trace of spiritual power in his body into the sacred source life form, the heavenly scarlet fire. Zhongzai, who had overdrawn his spiritual power, fell to the ground. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He no longer had the strength to stand up. At this time, the 2 six-winged angels standing on the carriage raised their staffs and pointed at the city behind them. The entire city began to burn. It turned into 2 red robes made of flames. They draped over the bodies of the 2 six-winged angels. The 2 six-winged angels were like red-robed archbishops. The 2 six-winged angels waved their staffs forward. The 76 two-winged angels behind them absorbed the residual heat of the city. Their weapons were coated with a layer of sunset. The red plum meteoric fire had completely exploded on Yanling's body. It only burned Yanling. Yu Changjian's sacred source life form, the Gorgon's tooth, collapsed and recovered like a building block. Within the flames, the Gorgon's tooth absorbed all the damage and pain. Yanling seemed unaffected. She could not even feel the heat of the flames. But in this magnificent red, she looked at the blossoming plum blossoms in front of her. Yanling had a feeling of enlightenment. It was as if she was about to perish in the flames. The red plum meteorite fire, which had been enhanced by too much and had even absorbed 2 top-notch strange fires, was simply too strong. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The bone spikes on Yu Changjian's arms and calves had all fallen off. Out of the few sharp teeth, only one was left. The red plum meteoric fire was about to be extinguished. However, Yu Changjian could not laugh. The sacred source life form, the heavenly scarlet fire, had arrived. The heavenly scarlet fire had used its ability to release these angels from scarlet flame heaven. It could also be amplified by the volcanic crater and the flame emperor intent that the elite guards constantly released. Yanling used nearly 40 seconds to remove Kai Hua's purple resentment demon flower's exclusive skill, Death Substitution Bind. Yanling did not care that the remaining red plum meteoric fire would burn the purple resentment demon flower, which was a plant fey. She let the purple resentment demon flower pass through the red plum meteoric fire and tightly wrap around her body. Kai Hua gritted his teeth and let his 2 main feys block in front of Yanling. Only 1 main fey was left to protect him. Just like how Yanling had protected Kai Hua in the past. Kai Hua also had to protect Yanling now. Because this kind of protection was for him. Kai Hua knew very well that if his sacred source life form, the Gorgon Silk, could not link with Yanling and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms, he would not be favored by his holiness. Even if his feys died, as long as the sacred source life form was still around, he would be able to enjoy his original treatment. Moreover, His Holiness the Foolish God had concocted a medicine that could recover a spirit chi professional's spiritual energy from a dead fey. It would allow the spirit chi professional to contract another fey's elixir. This elixir had always been one of the most precious medicines in the Freedom Federation. It was exclusive to His Holiness the Foolish God. Once it was released, it would definitely be fought over by the major families. Kai Hua felt that as long as he won this duel, His Holiness the Foolish God would definitely bestow the elixir. Before Kai Hua could think further, the flaming angels arrived one after another. They had already swung the Heaven's Scarlet Fire's second ability, Heaven's Adjudication's first strike. 7017K. Chapter 1757. Among the insect-type Carcinoma Fae, the Fire Rock Sandworm, the Desolation Bloodline Fae, the Burning Sky Scorching Hose exclusive skill, Fiery Fantasy Town. The elite guards summoned by the Peach Bluebird kept releasing abilities and were enhanced by the Flame Emperor's intent. The Blazing Angels, which already had the combat power of Myth 2, became even stronger, reaching the standard of Myth 3. Zhongzhe had exhausted all of his spiritual power for these two attacks. The Sky-Burning Clam's attack had ended. The Sacred Source Lifeform's Heaven's Scarlet Fire attack would become Zhongzhe's masterpiece in this battle. His spiritual power had been greatly depleted. Zhongzhe would not be able to spare any energy to join the battle in a short period of time. The Blazing Angels slashed at Yan Ling, who had just emerged from the Red Plum Meteorite Fire. One slash left a deep gash on the Purple Resentment Demon Flower's body. This gash even exposed Yan Ling's skin to the air. It was obvious that Yan Ling's battle armor had been cut open by the slash. Yu Changjian had to make a choice. Yan Ling was currently using the Sacred Source life form, the Gorgon Clam, to inject life energy into her body. It was to repair the damage caused by the Blazing Angel's attacks. His Sacred Source life form, the Gorgon Tooth, was still suffering from damage. However, without life energy, the Gorgon Tooth would not be able to recover once it was broken. Yu Changjian had to make a choice between his Sacred Source life form and Yan Ling's. Should he abandon his Sacred Source life form and do his best to protect Yan Ling? Or should he ensure that his Sacred Source life form did not die? The Blazing Angels did not give Yu Changjian any time to make a decision. Each of the Blazing Angels' attacks carried the Sacred Source Lifeform's Heaven's Scarlet Fire's ability, Heaven's Adjudication. Each attack had an armor-piercing and scorching effect. Yan Ling, who was being held by the Purple Resentment Demon Flower, finally let out a groan after a series of attacks. This was not because Yan Ling's body was injured and could not withstand the attacks. It was because the Purple Resentment Demon Flower had been cut into pieces by the Blazing Angels' sharp swords. Yan Ling's mind had been severely damaged after her own Fae died. Yan Ling had fused with the demons and was covered in vines. Her body was burning under the Blazing Angels' attacks. Yan Ling tried her best to hold on, but at this time, the two six-winged angels on the war chariots were already charging towards Yan Ling with scepters in hand. The six-winged flaming angel brandished the two scepters and released a dazzling scarlet flame. When the flame landed on Yan Ling's body was instantly carbonized. At this moment, Zhongzhe felt a chill and a fishy smell coming from underground amidst the continuous explosions of the swarm of insects. Zhongzhe immediately knew that Qianyu, who had fallen into Lu Jie's trap, was about to emerge from the ground. After Qianyu came out, he would immediately rush to Yan Ling's aid. He had to kill Yan Ling within 3 seconds. Zhongzhe gritted his teeth and channeled the spirit qi that Gao Feng had just recovered into the Crimson Heaven Fire. Then, all of the two-winged angels and six-winged angels launched suicidal attacks. Half of Yan Ling's charred body was burned by the sharp swords and flames. In Yan Ling's remaining body, there was clearly a living being that was desperately resisting. This creature was the middle devil that Yan Ling had contracted. Yan Ling, who only had half of her body left, did not have the second ability of Gorgon's Tooth, Gift of Tooth, performed by Yu Changjian. In order to save Yan Ling just now, the Tooth of Gorgon had suffered heavy damage. Yu Changjian did not have much spiritual power left in his body. Yan Ling was already dead. Zhongzhe's sneak attack was a success. Zhongzhe commanded the remaining 7 or 8 flaming angels to attack Kai Hua when the flaming angels weren't used up. At this moment, the water covered the ground. This cold water instantly extinguished the huge volcanic crater formed by the fire rock sandworm's slumber. Lu Jie sensed it through his insect queen. All the insects underground, including mycelium tapeworms and fire rock sandworms, had lost their lives. Lu Jie's pupils constricted. Hui Yao only had one insect type carcinoma Fei, the fire rock sandworm. If it was gone, so be it. Fortunately, he still had a spirit guard with mycelium tapeworms in reserve. Lu Jie's current fighting style relied heavily on the mycelium tapeworms. The mycelium tapeworms had become an important part of the insect swarm's endurance. The mycelium tapeworms were an insect-type carcinoma Fei. To a certain extent, it could double the size of the insect swarm. Without the mycelium tapeworms, Lu Jie would definitely be affected in the future. At this moment, Zhuo Ming, who had left Night Leaning Moon 10 minutes ago, returned. He spoke to Night Leaning Moon with a grave expression. "Chief Guard, I just received a report from the guard envoy on duty in the land of spirit suppression. The 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts that have been housed in the land of spirit suppression have died for no reason. The bodies of these 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts are unharmed, but their souls have disappeared." Night Leaning Moon's brows furrowed. She recalled that Luo had used race judgment not long ago. This attack had completely annihilated the insect swarm produced by the parasitic rot-flying locusts. However, the 2 parasitic rot-flying locusts in the land of spirit suppression had also died. Based on this, the race judgment ability was targeted at a certain Fei. It was not a species birthed by a certain Fei. If there had been other parasitic rot-flying locusts in the world, they would have been wiped out by this race judgment. Even though Night Leaning Moon was Her Majesty Radiance and had reached the Eternal Realm, she had never heard of such an ability. She had never heard of it before. No one cared about what had happened to Night Leaning Moon. Everyone's attention was focused on the battle between the 2 sides. Li Su's expression had completely darkened. Yan Ling was dead, and she was the core of the sacred source lifeform's connection with Kai Hua and Yu Changjian. The Mirror God had high hopes for the sacred source lifeform's connection. It would be difficult for him to explain himself to the Mirror God when he returned to the Freedom Federation. He had lost one member on his side. Without Yan Ling, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian, who had used up most of their spiritual power, did not have much fighting power left. Kai Hua's 2 Feis had also died protecting Yan Ling. Li Su was most dissatisfied with Chen Yu. Li Su had always felt that Black was a threat. Luo had urged the phaseless beast to attack Black, but Black had been in a deadlock with the phaseless beast for such a long time. Even Luo had needed to constantly inject spiritual power into the phaseless beast's body. This was enough to show how powerful Black was. Luo, who had been in a deadlock with Black, had done something proper. But what was Chen Yu doing? Radiance envoy Lu Yifun, who was leading the Radiance team, had been assisting the team since the beginning. But what about Chen Yu? He had used the Cambrian Pierfish to fight, and not only had he not harmed the enemy, but he had also used up a lot of spiritual power. Instead, he had used up a lot of Yu Changjian's spiritual power. Chapter 1758. If Yu Changjian had enough spiritual power, he and Yan Ling would have fused with the demons. How could he not have survived? If Chen Yu's caretaker was not Goddess Lian, even if they won this battle by a fluke, Li Xian would definitely settle the score with Chen Yu. According to the current situation, his plan to come to the Radiance Federation would not be able to come true. There was no change of expression on Goddess Lian's face. It was as though the person who had died was not a prodigy of the Freedom Federation. From the start of the battle, Goddess Lian's cold gaze had been fixed on Chen Yu. It was as though she was worried that Chen Yu would use the mermaid royal bloodline in the hidden sea songstress. All the spectators on the Star Web burst out with intense cheers. In a post on Star Web, someone had already explained the sacred source lifeforms. This explained the terrifying abilities of the 3 sacred source lifeforms and the connection between them. This made the viewers on Star Web very worried. Now that one of the opposing team members had been killed, the 3 sacred source lifeforms connection had been broken. There was nothing better than this. Before this team battle, Lu Shuang tried to analyze the situation of the battle. However, when the battle started, Lu Shuang, who was not a creation master, did not know what to say. Secondly, This battle had subverted Lu Shuang's understanding. Lu Shuang had been muted in the livestream room. However, the audience in the livestream room was cheering excitedly. Cultivation is going against the heavens. Lord Zhongzhe is so cool. These two attacks instantly killed the opposing team. If Lord Zhongzhe can make a few more of these attacks, there will be no suspense in this battle. Good night is like, what are the people above saying? Can't you tell? In order to make these two attacks, Lord Zhongzhe could not even stand up. These two attacks were Lord Zhongzhe risking his life to make a way out for the team. Love you 3,000 times. Lord Zhongzhe was able to make these attacks not only because of his own efforts, but also because of Lord Black, Lord Lu Yifan, and Lord Lu Jie's support. Ruthless time. The more I watch this battle, the more worried I am. When will this battle be over? I really hope that our Radiance's 5 heroes can go up and come down in good health. However, the excitement on Starweb had yet to be vented. The purplish-black seawater that spread out from the sand caused everyone to hold their breaths. Suddenly, something in the water seemed to entangle the sky-burning sea serpent. The thing tossed the sky-burning hoe into the sky. Then, a purplish-black wave hit the sky-burning sea centipede. This wave was like a sharp knife, instantly splitting the burning sky centipede's body into 2 halves, leaving only a little bit of fur connecting it. Upon seeing that its main fae, the burning sky centipede, was in a state of near death, the burning sky centipede's eyes widened. If not for the fact that the burning heaven roar was a desolate bloodline spiritual being with an extremely strong life force, it would have died. That strike had probably killed the heaven-burning sea centipede. However, such injuries were already very difficult to treat. However, even though Zhongzhe was sad and sorrowful, he did not lose his composure. Because at this moment, Gao Feng had revealed his hidden trump card. Gao Feng used the Yellow Spring Lily's exclusive skill. The Yellow Spring Lily was on the verge of death, while the Burning Sky Roar had recovered to its peak state. Lin Yuan, who was in a stalemate with Lu O, felt the rising purplish-black seawaters killing intent toward Lin Yuan. The lotus leaf bloomed again. Lu Jie pulled up Zhongzhe, who had fallen to the ground, and hurriedly leaned toward Lin Yuan. The energy in the purplish-black seawater was quickly absorbed by the lotus leaf. This time, a total of 5 lotus flowers grew on the lotus leaf. As the 5th lotus flower bloomed faintly, the water element energy in the purplish-black seawater was completely absorbed. During this period, countless waves and all kinds of attacks hit the lotus flower beside Lin Yuan. However, as long as these attacks were of the water element, they would become nutrients for the blue lotus flower when they hit the body. Qian Yu's angry attack was restrained again. This kind of restraint was a dimensional reduction attack. Qian Yu had no way to deal with it. At this moment, Qian Yu, whose appearance had changed greatly, stood between the Cambrian Pegasus and the deep freeze king eel. In the middle of his black eyes, there was a silver vertical pupil. It was full of rage. Qian Yu, whose body was covered with purple scales, looked very coquettish. On Qian Yu's face, there were demonic patterns that did not appear when Yan Ling and Yu Changjian merged with the devil. Qian Yu's devil might be a middle-rank devil, but it was not far from a great devil. Since he could not use the water element to attack, Qian Yu planned to use other attack methods to start a massacre. Lu Yifan's phase did not seem to have suffered any damage. However, Qian Yu, who had been assisting the insect swarm in the battle, had been constantly using the heavenly peach green bird's elite guard return. This had caused the spiritual power in Lu Yifan's body to be depleted. Lu Yifan was no longer of much use at this moment. Kai Hua and Yu Changjian came to Qian Yu's side with gloomy expressions. They summoned their phase and were ready to fight to the death. Kai Hua and Yu Changjian knew about Yan Ling's death. They had to win this battle, and it had to be a beautiful one. Otherwise, even if they did not die in this battle, they might not be able to survive after returning to the Freedom Federation. Night Leaning Moon suddenly felt that she had said something wrong. In fact, Lu Jie could also compete for the Radiance Envoy position. Even Lu Jie's first recognition of himself was still Lin Yuan's retainer. However, Lu Jie's feelings for Hui Yao were no different from before. Upon seeing the silver radiance on Lu Jie's body, the Moon Empress, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch frowned. He couldn't help but look at Night Leaning Moon, who had her eyes closed. Lian Shen's face showed a look of heartache as if the thing she liked was about to change. The viewers on the star web could not understand Lu Jie's tragic mood when he used the sacred source life form. Instead, he was happy that Lu Jie was preparing to use his trump card and kill move. If it wasn't for the tense situation, the star web netizens would have discussed why Lu Jie apologized to his six-winged demon. In the process of attacking Lu Jie, Qian Yu, as a contractor, did his best to exploit the middle-rank devil he had contracted. This middle-rank devil, which was only one step away from becoming a great devil, caused 2 bumps to appear on Qian Yu's head. However, there were no bumps. Qian Yu's bewitching purple skin was covered with black and blue ghost patterns. Qian Yu's inverted silver eyes were even more bewitching. It was obvious that he had used a series of mental control effects on Lu Jie, such as bewitching, seducing, and depravity. However, Qian Yu quickly realized that something was wrong. He had used the ability of a Myth 2 devil. How could it be resisted by a B-rank spirit chi professional who didn't even have a Myth Fey? Qian Yu couldn't help but frown. Impossible! Lu Jie, who had turned silver, said coldly. Lu Jie, who had already turned silver, said coldly. In this world, nothing is impossible. Being powerful is not only related to one's strength, but also how much one is willing to pay. Speaking of this, Lu Jie looked at his insect queen, Elegant Beauty, with nostalgia. Lu Jie knew that after this ability was used, Elegant Beauty would never be in this form again. The insect queen heard Lu Jie's apology again. Her delicate little hand held a strand of her hair and flapped her wings to turn to Lu Jie. A smile appeared on her face, which was used to being shy. It was as if she hoped that Lu Jie could remember her current appearance forever. Lu Jie looked deeply at Elegant Beauty again. Immediately, Lu Jie's body was covered in silver light, and a silver seed condensed in front of him. On this seed, there were thousands of silver bugs crawling about. This seed seemed to have become a shelter for all the insects. After these insects drilled into the seed could provide these insects with an absolutely safe shelter. The silver seed was like a pale silver crystal, and it was thousands of times more beautiful than a work of art. When Lu Jie gritted his teeth and threw this artful-like seed to the insect queen, the insect queen opened its arms and hugged the seed. Lu Jie's spiritual power poured into the insect queen's body. The insect queen's body erupted with the same silver light as Lu Jie's. But this time, the power of the silver light was not as weak as the silver light on Lu Jie's body. A silver light pillar that connected heaven and earth stirred up fine silver mist in the air. If not for the 4th stabilizing treasure, the set of mountains and rivers Geoji bells, enveloping this part of the world, that silver glow could probably be seen by all the residents within 100 kilometers of the Radiance Sacred Hall in the royal capital. The silver light spread across the sea of sand that had yet to dry up after being corroded by the purplish-black seawater. Small silver bugs were crawling on the sea of sand. The sea of sand was like a paradise for these silver insects. Behind Li Su and Lian Shen was the ordinary-looking young man with a black candle burning with purple light in his eyes. At this moment, the look in his eyes finally changed. Even Li Su and Lian Shen couldn't hear him. He muttered softly. When a sacred source life form is activated, it doesn't have any function, but it can activate a realm. Don't tell me that in the alien insect dimensional world, there was a stupid ruler who died after reaching the Samsara realm? It's just that it's too difficult for a human to form a contract with a sacred source life form of this level. Unless someone can provide it with an endless supply of life energy. Otherwise, the Radiance Sacred Hall will lose a talent. 7017K. Chapter 1760. Looking at the silver light in front of him, Yu Changjian, who was filled with hatred for Hui Yao, was the first to use his ability to contract a devil. Yu Changjian summoned 2 fays, and while supporting Qian Yu and Kai Hua, he opened his mouth and spat out a white bone spur from his throat. Apart from Lin Yuan, who was still in a deadlock with Lu O, only Zhongzhe was a creation master. Zhongzhe used Genius's connected tail to send a voice transmission to Lu Jia. Lu Jia, when the opponent's devil is fused with a spirit chi professional, I can't detect its specific ability. But according to the attacks of the devils when they use their abilities, I can still make some analysis. Once this attack lands on you or the insect queen, Yu Changjian will receive the same spiritual power feedback in your body. It will also allow the target to replenish Yu Changjian's vitality for a period of time while suffering damage. Zhongzhe was now a basic class 4 creation master, so his analysis would naturally not be wrong. Yu Changjian had initially contracted a low-rank devil. Even though it had been promoted to a middle-rank devil, it still had the foundation of a low-rank devil, so its ability was not strong. However, this function was already very useful for the promotion of low-rank devils to middle-rank devils. For example, after Yen Ling fused with the devil, Vine Fern Dance, this kind of large-scale killing ability. In a battle between experts, it was not very useful. It could only be considered a method to fight above its rank. Lu Jie received Zhongzhe's message but did not take any action. Just as the bone spur from Yu Changjian's throat was about to penetrate the silver light and land on Lu Jie, amidst the silver light, a hand covered in insect armor stretched out. This hand gently squeezed the white bone spur. Yu Changjian's attack with the ability of a middle-rank devil was completely crushed. Immediately after, a woman about 1.7 meters tall stepped out of the silver light. This woman's body seemed to be filled with the highest technology of the insect civilization. Her body was covered in insect armor, and each piece was the crystallization of the highest technology of an insect fae. The woman's right hand was grabbing a huge long spur. The shape of the long spur was somewhat like the long horn of the legendary alien insect, the monarch halberd beetle. This woman, who had transformed from the insect queen and was covered in insect armor, appeared. Holding the spear in his hand, he charged at Qian Yu. Lu Jie's sacred source life form was called the 1000 Insect Emperor Core. It had a special meaning for any insect-type creature. Human experts could be called kings, emperors, sovereigns, and even gods. The title was just a symbol of status, there was nothing special about it. However, for the Zergs, emperor had a special meaning. That was especially true in the subdimension. If the alien insects were lucky enough to become apostles and obtain sacred essence bodies, they would all take the form of women. Of all the alien insect female rulers, not all of them could be called emperors. Of course, Lu Jie and Night Leaning Moon were unaware of all this. Lu Jie's sacred source life form, the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core, was like a form of salvation or protection for insect species phase. However, the price of protection and redemption was that the insect species Fae that had fused with the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core would constantly lose its tenacious vitality. When the vitality was exhausted, the insect species Fae would continue to burn its prized reproductive ability. This meant that after the insect queen fused with the 10,000 Insect Emperor Core, if it did not obtain the support of a large amount of vitality, the insect queen would lose its ability to produce insect swarms. Lu Jie only had one Fae, the insect queen. If the insect queen could not produce insect swarms, Lu Jie would have no other Faes to use. The insect queen's spiritual toxin was secreted by the insect queen's gonads. The loss of reproductive ability would cause the insect queen's gonads to degenerate. From now on, Lu Jie would not be able to use the insect queen's spiritual toxin to control the carcinogen phase. However, Lu Jie still chose to use this attack. When Zhongzhe saw Lu Jie's sacred source life form, his eyes turned blood red. It was the same as the red plum meteorite fire that had burned on Yen Ling's body. Through his creation master ability, Zhongzhe knew of Lu Jie's sacrifice and predicted Lu Jie's outcome. However, Zhongzhe could not do anything about it. The fusion of the insect queen and the sacred source life form could produce such powerful strength. The speed at which the insect queen burned its vitality had reached a terrifying level. Unless there was a tremendous amount of vitality that could instantly restore the vitality of the entire mountain range into Lu Jie's body, only then would it be possible to sustain the consumption of the insect queen's life force and prevent it from destroying the insect queen's reproductive ability. However, even the peach sky blue bird, which was an A-rank spirit chi professional and had reached the great desolate realm, could not use its healing ability. It was far from being able to achieve this through Heartless. The peach sky blue bird's Heartless ability allowed it to mercilessly attack a target. The target's peach blossom battle dress and the miniature peach sky blue bird would move away from the target's body. The shield's defensive ability would be converted into vitality with healing effects that would be injected into the target's body. After understanding Lu Jie's situation from Zhong Zhe, Lu Yifan made a prompt decision. Lu Yifan made a prompt decision and had the heavenly peach bird cast amorous love on him. The miniature peach sky blue bird flew away, and Lu Yifan received a large amount of spiritual power. Then, Lu Yifan poured all his spiritual power into the peach sky blue bird's body. The peach sky blue bird landed on the insect queen's carapace, which had been formed by the fusion of the sacred source life form. A green peach blossom blossomed beside the insect queen. A large number of peach blossoms fell, and the peach sky blue bird used Heartless again and again. It restored the insect queen's vitality. At the same time, it found an opportunity to use biting jade rock on the insect queen, giving it an invincible effect. It also used vast ocean's protection to fight against Qianyu. Qianyu, who was extremely powerful, was hit by a wall. He felt like he was being targeted by a crazy person. However, even if Lu Yifan overdraft his spiritual power, the peach sky blue bird only supported Lu Jie with all its might. The insect queen's vitality lasted for a short 2 minutes, and it was finally about to be exhausted. Although Lin Yuan had been fighting with the phaseless beast, which had already burrowed into his soul, he could not control it. His mind, spirit, and soul were all affected. He could not use Morbius True Data to investigate Lu Jie's sacred source lifeform's ability. However, through Genius Connected Tail, he could sense Lu Yifan, Gao Feng, Zhong Zhe, and Lu Jie's thoughts. Through Zhong Zhe's thoughts, he knew Lu Jie's situation. This made him decide to give it his all. He looked at the situation where he had 2 souls, and one of them could collect faith shrines. Between him and this world-wrecking phaseless beast, who was more powerful? 7017K. Chapter 1761. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly heard Morbius speak to him from the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan, this phaseless beast is a little special, and it happened to burrow into your soul. Only one of your souls has contracted a sacred source life form, and the other soul is still empty. If I use a large amount of my roots to strengthen your soul, we should be able to imprison this phaseless beast. Lin Yuan's heart stirred when he heard Morbius' words. He knew very well that he had been in a stalemate with this phaseless beast, which was called World Calamity Beast, for too long. This phaseless beast's strength had reached Suzerain X/Myth I. Although it had not reached the pinnacle of Myth I, it was not far from it. This phaseless beast, Calamity of the World, had cast the deepened curse seal skill on itself in advance, deepening the curse effect on itself. It had also bewitched a portion of his mind, spirit, and soul power at the same time. Then, it had used the curse words and curse heart to corrode his soul. Lin Yuan, who had consumed the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar and the geocentric jade milk, could already be considered an extremely powerful existence among his peers. Even so, after Morbius used Calm Mind a few times, Lin Yuan still felt that his mind was out of control. It was as though control of his body was about to be taken away. However, Lin Yuan did not immediately counterattack the phaseless beast. This was because Lin Yuan wanted to get rid of the phaseless beast in his body. The phaseless beast's ability, Nation Destiny Steel, and its exclusive skill, Calamity Luck. If it was used on the Radiance's land, it would fundamentally affect the blessings of all living beings living in the Radiance's land. Previously, Lin Yuan did not believe in things like providence and luck. After all, he was a transmigrator. However, one auspicious fae after another slowly changed Lin Yuan's mind. In particular, the top-notch auspicious fae that nested on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus was the blessed swallow. This bird of good fortune had brought great luck to everyone in the return from faraway manor. Therefore, no matter what, Lin Yuan had to fundamentally prevent the phaseless beast from running out of his body. It would use the method of stealing the Radiance's nation destiny and providence to enhance itself. Therefore, even though Lin Yuan's spiritual energy was constantly being attacked by the phaseless beast, he was still able to withstand it. He also did not use Genius's skill, mental expansion, to counterattack the phaseless beast. Lin Yuan lured the phaseless beast into the soul of the uncontracted sacred source life form. He was holding the idea of using the shrine to fight against the phaseless beast that brought calamity to the world. Now, Morbius said that he could strengthen his soul and seal the phaseless beast. Even if he couldn't seal the phaseless beast indefinitely, at the very least, Lu O wouldn't be able to use it again in this battle. As long as he could do this, his goal would be achieved. In fact, Lin Yuan was very curious about phase like the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. The species of the World Calamity Phaseless Beast belonged to the Phaseless Beast family and the Hairy Beast genus. This meant that the World Calamity Phaseless Beast was the same as Genius and Xianxia. It was a creature that had evolved from a certain spiritual object. Afterward, Lin Yuan released the phaseless beast from his soul and studied it. It was very likely that they would find the key to cultivating the phaseless beasts that brought disaster to the world. Of course, these were all questions that Lin Yuan had been thinking about. Right now, Lin Yuan didn't have the time to consider these questions. This was because Lin Yuan's thoughts were all on Lu Jie. After the World Calamity Phaseless Beast drilled into Lin Yuan's soul, it once again used Disaster Heart and Disaster Words. At the same time, it used Seizing Mind and Soul to prepare to control Lin Yuan. Not only was Lin Yuan anxious, but Lu O was also anxious. From the current situation, it was obvious that her side was in a disadvantageous position. Lin Yuan endured the intense pain of his soul being attacked by the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. He moved the shrine between the two souls and entered his own soul. The shrine fiercely crashed into the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. The golden light spots in the shrine were extremely amiable to Lin Yuan's soul. However, they abnormally rejected the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. These golden light spots were filled with the power of faith, and they quickly filled Lin Yuan's soul. They trapped the World Calamity Phaseless Beast in a corner. The World Calamity Phaseless Beast could attack the mind, and soul. However, it was obviously not familiar with the power of faith. Lu O clearly felt the abnormality of the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. She sped up the speed of spiritual power pouring into the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. At that moment, Lin Yuan asked Genius to use its spiritual expansion ability, which had been holding back. The World Calamity Phaseless Beast's spiritual power was like a lake that had been scouring Lin Yuan's mind. At that moment, Lin Yuan's spiritual power connected to Genius's. The World Calamity Phaseless Beast originally wanted to use its spiritual power to scour a pond. But now, it was equivalent to letting the lake's water converge into a sea. The Soul Shrine's attack was fierce, and the World Calamity Phaseless Beast, which had suffered a spiritual power backlash, let out a sharp roar in Lin Yuan's soul. Sensing that something was wrong, Lu O immediately let the World Calamity Phaseless Beast use its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. It was prepared to obtain energy from the Matrix and get rid of Lin Yuan. Then, it would control the situation and obtain victory. This battle had been going on for too long. However, Lu O had already issued an order to the World Calamity Phaseless Beast. The World Calamity Phaseless Beast used its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. However, it was unable to connect with the Matrix and obtain energy feedback from the Matrix. This was because a second before the World Calamity Phaseless Beast used its mother-child twin body and Matrix's blessing. The reddish-gold radiance covered Lin Yuan's soul and cut off the possibility of this World Calamity Phaseless Beast contacting the outside world. Lu O's spiritual power wasn't damaged, which meant that the world calamity phaseless beast was still alive. However, Luo had lost the spiritual connection with the world calamity phaseless beast. At that moment, Luo, who had been in a deadlock with Lin Yuan, opened his eyes. Blood-red air waves mixed with black radiance spread out with Luo as the origin. Originally, Luo's head already had 4 long black horns. Now, these 4 horns extended again, and the horns were covered with blood patterns. The front of Luo's short silver hair was mixed with scarlet. At that moment, Luo's silver hair was almost completely dyed. Luo's figure grew a little taller. A long black tail and a pair of black wings suddenly emerged from Luo's body. The thick long tail was even longer than Luo's height. There was a layer of black-red crystal-like cuticle on the tail. The 2 wingspans were somewhat like the wings of bat species phase, but they were much larger and thicker than the wings of bat species phase. The black wings were engraved with dense red ghost runes. These ghost patterns would automatically emit a melody that was like a devil's whisper. The red ghost patterns on Luo's face spread all the way to the bottom of the collar. Chapter 1762. 6 tadpole-like patterns suddenly appeared in Luo's red vertical pupils, which had originally been black. The 6 tadpole-like patterns rotated. An indescribable aura gushed out from Luo's body. Previously, he had been fighting the demonized Qianyu, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian through the Insect Queen, which had fused with the 1000 Insect Emperor core. While Qianyu was not paying attention, the Insect Queen's spear pierced through Kaihua's body. The Gorgon's silk had added 2 layers of the bone erosion mark through the bone-eroding exploding heart function. He sliced off the Gorgon silk's arms with the blade of the spear. Even the spider silk under the arms was annihilated by the silver rays. This made Qianyu furious. Qianyu actually had a way to launch a counterattack against Lu Jie. However, Qianyu was aware of Lu Jie's state. Since he was at a disadvantage, Qianyu wanted to drag out the Insect Queen, which had fused with the sacred source life form, and defeat it. He did not want to clash head-on with Lu Jie and cause any accidents. Qianyu was not a creation master, but he knew very well. A suzerain X/fantasy V fairy source type life form, even if it was a 6-winged fairy and a sacred source life form, should not possess such formidable strength. Just as Lu Jie had said, he must have paid a price. In that case, it was just as Lu Jie had said. Lu Jie must have paid a certain price. Qianyu did not expect Kaihua to be so weak. 2 members of the Freedom Federation had been killed in front of the Freedom Envoy. Qianyu felt that he had lost all his face. Just as Qianyu was about to use the Cambrian Pegasus and Deep Freeze King Eel to pay a price, he had summoned his sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, to end the battle. Qianyu suddenly felt his body go limp. The middle-rank devil in his body was in a state of extreme fear. Qianyu turned to look at Luo. He was shocked to see Luo's current state. Luo had completely unsealed the great devil in his body. It was important to know that Luo usually only partially unsealed the great devil in her body when she fought. Completely unsealing the great devil would put a certain burden on her body. Why was Luo so angry for no reason? Could it be that there was a problem with the world-wrecking phaseless beast? After Luo completed her transformation, she grabbed at Lin Yuan with her slender black fingernails. In an instant, red energy filled the entire area. Balls of red energy formed stomach pouches one after another on the field. Among them, the stomach formed by the red energy around Lin Yuan's body was the most solid. The gastric sac squirmed violently as though it wanted to digest Lin Yuan. At that moment, the 8 cattails moved and pierced through the stomach. These 8 cattails were like ribbons of light. They fluttered gracefully in the scorched ground like fireflies. It floated a dozen meters away. This caused the expressions of those who had seen Lin Yuan's white cat tail to freeze. Lin Yuan had displayed the white cat's tail previously, be it in the counterattack against Luo or in the battle with Han Qi. The cat's tail felt illusory and didn't have a physical body. But now, the cat's tail was abnormally solid. At this moment, everyone saw a white civet that could be described as magnificent, dragging 8 long tails as it crawled out of the red stomach sac. As it waved its tail, it let out a childish meow. However, this childish roar seemed to have some kind of power that was connected to the heavens. Genius had already executed its cat's cluster ability. It had used the elemental affinity and physique of over 3,000 feline fays in the swamp world's spirit cat paradise on its own body. Immediately after, the cat's tail danced. A magnificent aurora was set off on the ground. The aurora set off by Genius's tail was different from a real aurora. Instead, it was an energy belt formed by various elements. In the impression of ordinary people, a fae that possessed more than 5 elements could be called an all-element fae. All-element fays weren't specialized in the elements, and their bodies had limited spiritual power. Thus, all-element fays were usually not very powerful. Fortunately, all-element fays generally had good looks and were often raised as ornamental fays. There were at least a few dozen colors in the aurora. This 8-tailed spirit cat's tail rippled with elements of light, darkness, wind, fire, water, earth, thunder, electricity, and sound. Even some of the mutated attributes were available. The energy belt formed by at least a dozen attributes poured down in a frenzy. Even Lu O, who had fused with the Great Devil, didn't dare to resist it head-on. He hurriedly summoned his other 2 fays to resist. Genius' current strength had already exceeded the limits of a fantasy breed fae. It was just as Lu Jie had said. If one wanted to burst out with powerful strength, one would have to pay a certain price. However, Genius didn't need to pay a price. The ones who had to pay the price were the over 3,000 feline fays in the Spirit Cat Paradise, which had good food and drinks. The original Spirit Cat Wonder House had now become a Spirit Cat nursing home. Those lively and healthy feline fays were all lying on the ground. If it wasn't for the fact that they could still breathe, people would have thought that these spirit cats had been wiped out. Genius elemental affinity wasn't the only thing that had been enhanced by these 3,000 Diamond X/Legend fays. At the same time, it had an extremely strong physique. Genius had been raised by Lin Yuan's side since it was young, so it didn't have the habit of fighting with other feline fays like other feline fays. However, Genius's 8 tails were wrapped with tremendous force. 4 of them smashed at Lu O, while the other 4 smashed at Chen Yu. Genius' appearance was too stunning, and the audience that was curious about the 8-tailed spirit cat had all solved the mystery in their hearts. They had seen the 8-tailed spirit cat's true appearance. As compared to this 8-tailed spirit cat, the audience was more concerned about Black, the young genius of the Radiance 100. However, the moment the audience, including the Radiance 100 sequence members, saw Black again, they suddenly realized that the silver mask on Black's face was gone. Many people who had been paying attention to Black were guessing his age and appearance. When Black's age was verified, it was no longer a secret. The face behind the silver mask immediately became the thing that the audience was most looking forward to. At this moment, Black, the young genius, finally revealed his face. However, when the Star Web audience and the Radiance 100 sequence members saw Black's face, they couldn't help but have a doubt in their hearts. Damn it, why is Black's face so familiar? 7017K. Chapter 1763. Wasn't this the lucky spectator who had defeated Meng Su with a wave of his hand without even summoning a fae? Wasn't this the Lin Yuan who had released a red light and defeated Meng Su? It was clearly 2 identical faces, but there were many people on StarWeb who were unwilling to admit it and did not dare to admit it. There were also many people who had already expected this. They felt that it was only right. The people who were unwilling to admit it were the fans who stood on Lin Yuan's side and Black's side. Black had first appeared on StarWeb because he had protected Millstone Town from the Class 1 alien insect dimensional rift and became the Radiance's youth hero. In addition, Black had used a silver healing-type fantasy breed fae in Millstone Town. It could regenerate severed limbs. Black had always been mysterious on StarWeb and had constantly created history on Star Tower. It made Black a true top genius. Lin Yuan's appearance was too sudden and amazing. Both Lin Yuan and Black's sudden appearance had stunned some people's eyes. This caused many people to regard Black and Lin Yuan as their idols. As a result, these radical fans found out that their idols were actually the same person. Damn it, weren't they scolding the other identity of their idols on Star Web every day for the past 6 months? At the thought of this, these fans could not help but shrink their necks and feel embarrassed. At the same time, they were happier than before. Who did not want their idols to be more outstanding? Black's fans and Lin Yuan's fans had quarreled mainly because both sides were unwilling to admit it, but they subconsciously recognized each other's excellence. If it was someone with mediocre talent compared to Black and Lin Yuan, Black and Lin Yuan's fans would definitely not have such a big reaction. Hee hee, what kind of trash dares to compare with our idols? Hee hee, what kind of trash dares to challenge our idols? Those Star Web viewers who took it for granted had long felt that Black and Lin Yuan were too similar. The only reason they were not sure was that Lin Yuan and Black were the same person. It was because Black and Lin Yuan had never used the same fei or the same kind of attack method. However, both of them were too talented, especially Black's strength, which had completely shaken off Chu Ci, who was as famous as Black and Lin Yuan. It had made Chu Ci, who had a bronze fantasy breed fei, appear to be overshadowed. As for those veteran factions and the top factions, they had seen Lin Yuan defeat Zhong Zhe during the Dark Knight Assembly's Civil and Martial Twin Dragons competition. He knew Lin Yuan's true identity. Therefore, he had never thought that Black was qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as Lin Yuan. However, since Black had defeated Lu Shuang, these veteran forces and the members of the top forces had no choice but to take Black seriously again. Afterward, Black and Han Chi had used sacred source lifeforms in their deathmatch on the General Execution platform. The descendants of the top factions and veteran factions knew Black's identity earlier than the other Star Web viewers. At this time, Black's identity was no longer a taboo in the circle of the top forces and veteran forces. Now that Black had chosen to reveal his true face, it was obvious that he had the intention to reveal his true identity. Therefore, the younger generation of these top factions and veteran factions, who rarely spoke on Star Web, started to popularize Black. It was unknown which veteran force or top forces member had accidentally said a few words. He revealed Black's identity as the Moon Empress disciple. In fact, the moment Blackface noticed that the silver mask on his face had disappeared, the happiest ones were the loyal fans who had been paying attention to and supporting Black all the way. It was so dark that these fans had fantasized countless times about what this face would look like behind the mask. However, most fans felt that Black's face wouldn't look good. Otherwise, why would he cover his face with a silver mask? It could be said that Black's true appearance had exceeded the understanding of this group of fans. Previously, Black's fans had felt that even if Black wore a mask, he still had an excellent temperament and a near-perfect bone appearance. Now that Black had taken off his mask, he had a face that perfectly matched his temperament. Sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a straight nose bridge. On his youthful face, the tightly pursed corners of his mouth were full of fortitude. Presumably, when Black had been resisting the insect tide in Millstone Town, he had also had such an expression. Zhang Xiaobai, Lu Pinru, Tan Ran, and Exening had been watching this duel with suspense. They looked at Lin Yuan, who had defeated Han Chi and seemed to have made Lu O suffer in the team battle. The trio could not help but sigh at the speed of Lin Yuan's strength improvement in the past 8 months. Back in Millstone Town, Lin Yuan's strongest fei was only at silver. But now, he was already standing at the peak of the Radiance Federation's younger generation. More importantly, Lin Yuan had just turned 19 this year. The 4 of them were now living in the Return from Faraway mansion and usually had the opportunity to eat with Lin Yuan. Therefore, the 4 of them had some understanding of Lin Yuan. Looking at Lin Yuan's pursed lips, they knew that Lin Yuan was worried and angry. The moment the white civet with 8 long tails swept its tail towards Lu O and Qianyu, Lu O and Qianyu were shocked. The Moon Empress, Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, and the Pity God revealed a surprised expression at the same time. It was hard for them to shift their eyes away from genius. The 4 of them were Class 5 Creation Masters, and the Moon Empress was even qualified to call herself a Class 6 Creation Master. Naturally, she only needed a glance to see through Genius's situation. Behind the pity god, the youth with a black candle burning in his eyes had keenly noticed this. He looked at Genius as well. However, as he did not possess the ability of a creation master, he could not see anything special about Genius. However, he knew that this white spirit cat was definitely extraordinary. The Moon Empress' pupils contracted again and again. Through Genius's exclusive skill, the Moon Empress might not be able to see that Genius could become a creation master and walk the path of a creation master. However, she could see Genius's limitless possibilities. She suddenly understood why Lin Yuan had such a high standard as a creation master at such a young age. At the thought of this, the Moon Empress suddenly looked at the pity god. She noticed that the pity god was also looking at Lin Yuan. When the pity god saw the Moon Empress looking at her, she raised her brows. She swung her golden red fishtail and revealed a playful expression. She even smirked at the Moon Empress. The Moon Empress' eyes surged with killing intent. However, she did not know that the pity god was not interested in Genius but Lin Yuan himself. For some reason, the more she paid attention to Lin Yuan, the more she felt her bloodline throbbing. This feeling was not as obvious as when Qianyu fused with the sacred source life form, Hidden Sea Muse, and stimulated the royal bloodline. However, it was more palpitating and made her bloodline tremble. A cat species, Fei, even if it had walked the same path as the phaseless beast, had undergone an evolution that transcended the nature of life and had become a new species. It could not compare to the feeling that Lin Yuan gave the pity god, which left a deep impression on her. 7017K, you're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.